And we are live doing this shit again. It is Shit Shooting Sunday, U.S. Imperialism, This Is Mine Now edition. We'll be discussing U.S. adventurism overseas. We might have a few veterans joining the call. We have a longtime alternative media journalist and a longtime, a retired, what was it, Army Intel analyst. Was that you, Finian?
Yes, sir.
All right, and we've also got Lupinit, an American living in Britain, and Idiot's Query, a guy always interested in asking questions. Why don't we start with some housekeeping, and then I'll get all of you to introduce yourself and let people know where they can find your projects. Yeah, I need this VPX bang I have in my hand here. If anybody could sponsor me, it'd be that company, because I would drink this shit like water. We are sponsored by Liberty mugs that you can use to piss off your coworkers while drinking fluids at the same time. We're sponsored by Brave Browser, the ad-resistant, tracker-resistant browsing experience that supports creators directly rather than forcing them to cut to whatever advertisers and corporations happen to be spoofing their content. We are supported by the Cash App, which is $1 and Bitcoin wallet that you can use with a Visa card that they will provide to you with a customized laser etching with your signature on it. And this service will give you $5 for the first $5 you send. So feel free to download that and sign up for that service as soon as possible. Same with Crypto Tab, which is a tab you can use in your browser or in the background of your browser, your Chrome-based browser, to mine Bitcoin with your unused CPU energy. So with all of that out of the way, there are many more ways to support me in the chat or in the description. There'll be ways in the chat, though. I'm going to start doing that now. I'm going to annoy whoever's in the chat with like little ads and shit, because like I've got to get this lucrative in order to make it worth it, and in order to make sure that I can serve anarchy all day, every day. Additionally, I'm going to be doing a daily news show either this Monday or the next, and that daily news show will have anchors. So if you are someone who wants to regularly do a news show one day a week with me on my channel, get some exposure on your products, get some ideas out there, let me know. Claire's already expressed interest, and I'm going to try and make this project as open source as possible until I get a 24-hour motherfucking alternative news source, because there aren't enough of those out there. So without further ado, why don't you all introduce yourselves and let people know where they can find you.
All right, I'll go first. You can find me at on Steemit under @Finian, and I'm also on the web through my business, which is libertyprofessionals.com, and on Twitter as libertypropi. That's it for me. Thanks.
I'm Idiot's Query. You can find me on Minds, Twitter, YouTube. It's coming soon, hopefully. I'm almost done with that shit. I talk shit and I ask questions, and yeah, I try to use as much logic as possible. Idiot's Query is pretty much my universal tag.
Okay, I'll go. I'm Claire Burnish. I am a journalist in independent media, and I haven't been writing for a while because the suppression and censorship is that bad. My focus is free speech and really the topic tonight, imperialism and hegemony and such. And I just try to kind of slay the bullshit to make sure that people know the truth of what the mainstream media is actually saying.
Hey, I'm Lupinate, and basically my main thing is logic, reason, and reality, and trying to teach people how to view all of those things. And US imperialism is one of those interesting topics that sort of violates all of them.
All right, very cool. So the first thing I guess I'll get started with is what's y'all's experience thinking about U.S. imperialism, and like what sort of started you on the path to considering it a negative rather than how we get our blank? I mean, I'll start then. Um,
I do have something. I have something. It took me a second to think about it, if I may.
yeah, no problem. Go for it.
When I first started writing in March of 2015 as a journalist, and one of the first articles that I wrote about what were the number of dead in Afghanistan and how it's there were a number of sites. I think some of them are still in operation that kind of they make that their goal is to just count the civilian casualties. But even they are undercutting the numbers by about 3 times from what I learned in a ton of research for that. And although that I've been anti-war for as long as I can possibly remember, and just I'm kind of repulsed by what the U.S. does overseas, it was kind of trying to quantify that over 1.5 million people had died, and that we would never know who were actually combatants, who were children, who were elderly. Some would never be claimed, or they would go missing and never be found, or people would die and they have no relations to anybody and nobody would ever know about it. It was a stunning realization. And there was a documentary in Iraq that kind of toured the day before the US started bombing Iraq, and that again, the people looked happy and everybody was kind of milling about doing their business like a normal society would do. And here we come with our exceptionalist attitude, as if we have the right to do whatever it is that we want to and trample in any nation that we want to if they have something that we want. And I say we again. I know that you don't like saying that term, but I say that because this is the government that is acting with our tax dollars. And until we can break that chain, I believe that it is a we. So, at any rate, those kind of uh, set on fire my anti-war sentiments and made me realize the whole of the malevolence that was happening around the world. I think those were the biggest.
Very cool. Anybody else?
Mine was when I started going deeper into the intelligence portion of all of it and how much they can do with all the information they gather and all that good news. So I'm really interested in being a part of that kind of strategy. But then I realized that what the government is doing is deeply involved in that. They do really crazy shit. They probably, and it goes against exactly what they're trying to tell people that they're doing. So that was the main reason I got like curious and against what they were doing.
Yeah, and that's a fairly good reason. I mean, I started like essentially, and I don't want to be too like diminutive about it, but I started essentially because of Ron Paul. Like when he was starting to talk about how the U.S. was everywhere, it's like, and he was a Republican, and I was like a Bush supporting neocon when I was in high school. It sort of started to keep like open my eyes to a lot of the sort of corruption that goes on, especially considering the fact that many people don't look at it in a very critical way because they've got their predetermined biases that their parents sort of baked into them.
I think for me, the Iraq War, finding out Colin Powell lied, kind of really started hitting things home to me. To be quite frank, that one hit me for six, to be quite honest, because I really respected that guy. And to know that he was just basically a puppet was quite disheartening, to be honest. And that then led me down a number of different paths, including Ron Paul, who just solidified it.
Yeah, for me, I'd say ignorance is not bliss. Basically, I've always wanted to know like as much as I can without going crazy, pretty much. And I was an Army intel analyst in the early 90s and completely oblivious, basically like a hardcore neocon, Fox News watching person. And as an analyst, though, I started to see things that just didn't add up. And I already knew that compartmentalized intelligence is very effective. Like people say, like, how could they keep that a secret? Well, they just don't understand, no offense to them, how well the system works. And it's very easy, actually, to keep very large scale operations secrets. And
Very, very easy.
yeah, and I mean, I started, I was already doing research on history, and as an intel analyst, I was reading strategy books and learning about past wars. And almost every war in the modern day that I looked up had basically either been started by a lie or started on purpose or some version of a false flag. I mean, it goes all the way back to like way back, like World War One, World War Two. Basically every conflict that we've had in like modern history have all either been planned or purposely started. And even our recent history is the same way. Like you guys are talking about them lying about Iraq's WMDs, and of course now they're lying about Syria. So the MO, I guess when the internet wasn't that powerful and most people were not researching and doing the kind of stuff and the kind of work I was doing, most people would never put all that together. And I think now, because of the internet and so much of the past coming out, verified proof that all this stuff, the Gulf of Tonkin never happened, the sinking of the Lusitania. I mean, like, there's a long list and nobody can refute it. So, yeah, that's the kind of stuff that early on woke me up to what was going on. And even a couple of people mentioned 9/11. When I was watching a Fox News reporter live on the scene, and there was no plane debris on the ground in front of the Pentagon. I mean, it was a live report. There was no way it could be doctored one way or the other. And of course, as an analyst, like, this doesn't make sense to me. So, yeah, there are a lot of unanswered questions and a lot of BS out there. It's anybody that disputes that there's a lot of bad stuff going on is very, very deceived or well programmed, I guess.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you should bring up 9/11 because realistically, like, even if it wasn't an inside job, even if the entire inside job mentality is full of shit, which I don't think it is. I think that there's too much there to have any sort of doubts that there's things to doubt in the official story. But that's probably a topic. Well, I don't know. Maybe we'll get into that today. But they, at the very least, let it happen. And then suddenly they get to plant their bases very close to Israel, an ally that they've been swearing allegiance to for a really long time, and they get to have all these bases right near Russia, China, all of these major financial interests, and they get to play with their war toys in a place that's very far away from American citizens, so that the American citizens are detached from it. It seems very obvious that there's something awry there at the very least. So, but either way, yeah, I mean, and Claire, what, like, I don't want to make this a 9/11 stream, but how much do you think that that 9/11 had to do with spreading imperialism?
Well, very much a lot. I don't see how it could have been done without not necessarily that specific disaster, but something of that magnitude, because uh, afterward we declared war on either a tactic or an idea. You cannot declare war on terror. It doesn't. That's not a thing that you can actually do. There is no war there, and it's not an officially declared one anyway. It was a blanket excuse in the tragedy that hit the nation on top that kind of propelled all of the security state and the police state and everything else. I mean, this has been the most calamitous development, I would say, for the people ever.
Yeah, agreed. And not to mention that, but they also get to spread an intelligence network all over the world, which is something Idiot Square was talking about earlier. They get to spread this intelligence network all over the world. They get to have their eyes everywhere, and that's not suspicious to a lot of people.
A lot of people I mean, it's such a classic idea, this nanny state, the government will take care of you, don't worry, you're secure here, when it's so ironic that the propaganda says they're fighting for our freedom, like in every nation basically on the planet, and our country is falling apart at the seams in a lot of ways. I mean, if they're going to extort our tax dollars, these wars and this hegemonic I don't know, crusade everywhere else really needs to cease. It's obvious what the goals are. It has nothing to do with the people at all. The government operates only to maintain its own existence. And it does so primarily through taxation to feed the war machine and the security apparatus, which is intertwined with the police state and everything else. I mean, it's a monster we're fighting here.
Right. Well, yeah, go ahead.
There's one thing I wanted to add with regards to that statement of we're fighting for your freedoms. Objectively speaking, when I was much younger, you could travel without having somebody basically copping a feel or giving you cancer. So as far as I'm concerned, we've lost a shit ton of freedoms because we gave in to the fear. And if we had been sensible, we'd have let go of all of these backscatter machines and TSA agents and would have had people flying as normal and dealing with shoe bombers as they actually did.
The shoe bomber? You mean the guy that was...
Sorry, underpants bomber.
Both of those guys were basically... They had their hands held and they were escorted on the planes, and on both of those occasions, multiple witnesses saw that they had handlers. But anyway.
The shoe bomber, incidentally, is housed in the federal penitentiary in my tiny town where I am in Colorado.
I forget which one of it was, but one of those two, they refused to let him on the plane, and somebody in a nice fancy suit convinced them to allow him to go on anyway. And the people that witnessed it were reputable too. Like the guy was a dentist or something. He was like one of the major professions. Yeah, even stuff like that staged.
I believe that the whole idea was ramping up as far back as the 70s when there were hostage takings of planes and such. It was kind of the first introduction to what was really shocking and became headline news for a very long time. That was my impression as a really young child back then. And then we come up to the time, right before 9/11, things had pretty much settled, and it wasn't like everything was good, but there was kind of a status quo that was even and flowing. And then 9/11 comes and it becomes such chaos that ever since then, it's almost impossible to discern what operations seem staged and unrealistic or, manipulated after the fact versus something that organically happens anymore, because the government is so complicit in so many things, it's difficult to tell.
I basically assume all news events reported regarding something trying to start a war are fake, because based on historical trend, they have been. So I always doubt them to begin with, and then work to find out what they're lying about.
Yeah, it sounds like me these days with all these people committing suicide. As a private investigator, I always joke, and halfway joke, that it's a murder until proven a suicide. Same way with all these activities and incidents. It's basically, it's an inside job or a false flag until proven otherwise.
Pretty much. That's the way I see things too.
Well, and it'd be pretty dumb at this point to not see it that way, especially since a lot of these things have been either allowed to happen or specifically encouraged to happen by certain parties. And all of the profit that could be made off of it makes it seem very unlikely that these things weren't pre-designed for that profit.
Yeah, that gets into a whole nother angle of it that I wanted to bring up. 9/11 wasn't just about, NADA or whatever the heck it's called, the Patriot Act and all that, and clamping down on people's individual rights. It was also expanding state spending and perpetuating the Ponzi scheme, keeping it going, because all of our economic numbers basically have been getting worse and worse, like exponentially worse. Basically, every president that goes by, they're doubling the debt now, and they know it's unsustainable. There's no way to draw it back in with high interest rates. So now they're just going to inflate it to the moon, and one part of that is this debt spending for war. Like the new Space Force. They're doing, and the war on immigration now. It's so that they can spend all this money, and by spend I mean they create debt and then pay off all these contracting companies, and it keeps the Ponzi scheme going. So without all that extra spending, it would collapse sooner.
Right. Well, and also, of course, the entire, like, so when you blow up a bomb, you destroy that bomb. And so they have to mine those resources for new bombs elsewhere. There's no real recycling to be mentionable. And a lot of these bombs are filled with, like, depleted uranium and things like that, things that you can't pull out of the environment for a very long time. So they pollute a lot. And then, like, I was mentioning this the other day, that they pollute a shit ton. The military pollutes a shit ton, and it pulls a shit ton of resources out of the ground to continue polluting, to continue killing for profit. And essentially, all of these places that they're in become mines and resource pits, and they're very close to other mines and resource pits that they have to protect for the purpose of hegemony, which is a good word to use for it. So I'm glad that you brought that up, Claire. And that's one of the reasons that all these cheap biofuels are still illegal, even though they, like hemp, for instance, even though they would fundamentally supplant a lot of the industry in terms of energy, in terms of the way it's produced, and in terms of the way it's used. And so I think that a lot of this can be broken down to people not considering the costs of their acceptance of these things, and that's all about, like, the sort of troop worship, I think. But, like, those give a few bounce off points, so anybody interested can bounce off of them.
Well, the thing about resources too is hemp could replace so many products just beyond energy. I mean, paper and clothing, and I mean all sorts of different. The list is just kind of almost interminable, and that's a big threat when you have a plant that can grow that quickly and go back in the ground and grow that quickly and is sustainable, versus these industries like cotton that use a ton of resources, including water, and they've kind of been a darling of the government for so long that you have these established industries that can't be just up and supplanted by something that might make more sense, at least according to the government. And of course, the government is providing subsidies to all of these other businesses and such. So we get in a quagmire where the government works against both common sense, the people, and oftentimes even smaller businesses and everything. I mean, the hegemony is not just overseas, it's kind of in domestically too, if you will. I think that people don't realize how much the government has intruded into everything and how impossible it is to extricate it without just clearing house.
Yeah, I mean, of course, I don't mind destroying the government, so that's my particular goal. But what were you going to say, Finian?
I was just going to bring up the fact that a lot of the most recent wars have been fought to maintain the U.S. petrodollar, and a lot of the so-called military-industrial complex's activity is related to that as well. And it's no longer working, of course. All the major, like the BRICS countries and stuff, have moved away. And a lot of people I don't exactly understand how it works, but I know that one of the strategies behind the petrodollar is that it forced people to hold US dollars. So is kind of a genius move because it made the US dollar the world reserve currency, but it also allowed us to get rich by forcing other people to have to hold dollars to trade in oil. And now all of that's stopped. So some of these most recent wars, like Libya, for example, and actually Iran's the same way. And Iraq was too. They're talking, like Iraq, for example, he was talking about selling oil in euros. Well, of course, they didn't like that very much. Libya was talking about setting up a gold-backed African currency, and they didn't like that very much. So they were going into all these countries to basically prop up that petrodollar and maintain the system. And at the same time, of course, they were flying or shipping out the gold that those countries held in their reserves. So a lot of different sides to it, but it has to do with, they're maintaining their economic hold on the world. And unfortunately, war is like the last resort, and even that doesn't work anymore. I'm not sure what they're going to try next.
More war.
Well, I
Unfortunately,
was going to say mass
I
extinction,
suspect.
probably.
Yeah, I watched a video today. Bill Holter was talking about, like, of course, nobody knows for sure what they're going to do, but he expects for them to have some kind of an excuse. Basically, hey, if X didn't happen, this economic collapse wouldn't happen. And nobody knows what it's going to be, but of course, one of the assumptions is it could quite possibly be a world war.
Well, and with the way that Bilderberg was just talking, it looks like world war is definitely a possibility on the agenda.
Yep, and they can fight the next war with weapons that they've already bought. It's not like they have to spend a lot of money to buy them.
Well, and so on that level, then, because a lot of this production is already being done, do you think that do any of you think that it's primarily switching gears that prevents these industries from ceasing their efforts, or do you just think they don't care that they're being unethical, that they're spreading this sort of terribility across the globe?
I
Or
think it's the
both?
incentives. I think it's mainly the incentives, to be honest. If you're getting paid shit tons of money to turn a blind eye or take favorable action to get votes and jobs for your constituency, yada, 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 it's a cascade effect is the problem. Because you get politicians giving jobs to companies in their constituencies, which then make the weapons, which then get used in the wars, which then get the politicians more votes because they're being patriotic, plus they're getting jobs for the constituency, plus they need to build more bombs now because they've blown a bunch of them up. It's an economic cycle of creative destruction. And it doesn't last. It never does.
Yeah,
Well, of
that's
course,
like,
I mean, it never does, isn't really like, because there are plenty of things that have never happened before. I have faith in the U.S. government's ability to suck harder than anything has ever sucked before. What were you going to say, Finian?
I was just going to bring up the fact that modern day cruise missiles are like over $1 million each. So yeah, I'm sure the company that makes that, last I knew, was Raytheon. They probably love it when those things get fired.
Yeah, and
And
Raytheon, Northrop
Get
Grumman,
resupply.
Grumman, like fucking all of these, Lockheed Martin, Boeing, all of these major quote defense industry spenders, they get a huge amount of the pie in terms of tax dollars and the invisible numbers too. So, what were you gonna say, Claire?
I was going to talk about the authorization for use of military force, which, coming up for a vote, we're literally about to vote in perpetual war. As if the war on terror weren't that already, this would make it worse. So when it comes to kind of the last gasp of empire, this is it. That's why imperialism right now is it's kind of like taking this shiny front stage when it really shouldn't. It's making a last gasp effort to stay alive. So really, at this point, anything goes from the US government, and that's kind of a scary position to be in for everybody else, like us included.
what exactly is changing? Because like the last I knew, I thought the rule the rule was the president could authorize military action, but then he had to have the congressional approval after
Seven-
X amount of days.
It-
So now
it-
the
it's up-
72 hours.
they're taking out they're making it a lot easier for the president to essentially have authoritarian kind of autocratic use of force. There's not as much, there won't be as much of a check and balance at all with Congress or anything. Not that there really was. I mean, what's really
Yeah.
officially declared, but this is bad.
Not being funny, they're just making what was de facto de jure. This is nothing that, to me, this is really nothing that huge. It's just
Except that once you
validating
put it on paper, it becomes huge. So the way that this authoritarian system works, it looks to the paper to authorize and to make good and justify other things. And that's what's worrisome, I think.
Well, that's
You-
fair enough, but there's worse ones than the ALF, to be fair. I mean, Finian highlighted one earlier, which was NDAA. The one for 2012 ended habeas corpus completely.
Yeah, and it meant that U.S. citizens could be stripped of their citizenship so that they could avoid like respecting any of their quote legal rights. That's pretty bad shit.
Do you guys remember the speech? And I don't know where he did it, but do you remember the speech that Obama gave where he said basically that, roughly quoting him, we need a military force just as powerful as the army and just as strong. And basically, he was talking about brown shirts. Like he wanted to create his own separate military force within the United States. And it just makes me wonder what Claire was saying is that what she's saying is about to change could lead to that force. So we'd end up having the equivalent of brown shirts or a separate military force that probably would not be limited the same way the existing military force is on domestic land. Just one thing to look out for.
I actually have something, I can further that a little bit because I believe very strongly that a number of the alphabet agencies that we're witnessing kind of go rogue right now, in actuality, like CBP, ICE, and even CPS, etc. And if you consider how the police forces, from the tiniest local police force to the biggest, have basically been thrown excess military vehicles and weapons and wear and whatever they want, almost. People keep saying, like, if the people were to revolt, who would stop them? Like, how could it be stopped? They're never going to quash it. Martial law can never blah, 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 blah. Look at how these things are distributed across the nation and the shift in how things are happening against the citizens, including, I mean, we all know surveillance and such, but the impunity of police in shooting people and all of these things together, it's almost as if it's conditioning for what might be down the line if something were to happen. And it's really important, like he was saying, that when you look at the OUNF, these little things that don't seem to mean much, that can be easily dismissed as not related or as not important or completely insignificant, really aren't in the bigger picture. I think that's something to keep an eye on too.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and they always do baby steps too. It's like one little, small step at a time. The gun control laws are the same way, all the way back from, the main National Firearms Act or whatever. People are like, oh, you have too many gun rights. Like, no, we've been giving ground on gun rights for a very, very long time. So, like enough is enough. And I don't even, let's say they had their own separate military force that was like only, like Trump has his own security. I don't know if you guys knew that or not, but he has separate security from the Secret Service. And it's actually a pretty smart move because, no offense, but since JFK and people like that, you can't really trust the Secret Service. But let's say he had his own military force too, then things start to get a little out of hand. But even with that, as long as people had military style weapons, people as in like, the whole body of the people in the militia, I still don't think they could get away with what they want to do. So they're going to have that force and try to disarm people at the same time. So maybe they'll create the force first, and then they'll try to move to disarm people.
That makes a lot of sense too, because I could see that happening in a tactical standpoint. If you're trying to
Mhm.
overthrow someone that you know that can have just as much power, or that can even overthrow you with the slightest bit of ease, you're gonna want to take a step back and look at what you can do instead. How can you infiltrate very slowly yet effectively? And by militarizing the police and everything else like that, you're easily gonna be able to overthrow the people at any point in time. However, I will say that it's not pointless to fight back. I will never say it's pointless to fight back. And so I think that even though we do have restrictions as people, we can still fight back with what we do have. So
Yeah, even
Well,
when
to
the
be
odds are
fair,
against you, you'll still win in the long run. A lot of people will die, but Afghanistan and Iraq are good examples of that.
I was going to say, to be fair though, all anybody needs nowadays is a 3D printer, and they can become their own arsenal manufacturer if they really want to.
Well, and so let's get on to that then. Because it's relatively well known that war profiteers make their primary money whenever a new frontier is discovered. And Trump is starting a space race 2018 to try and revitalize the old sentiment of space race with Russia, or whatever other global powers are starting a space race with him, saying that the U.S. needs a space force. So U.S. imperialism in space, making everybody that much more afraid of the sky. Because that's one of the things. If you look at the way that it's operated in the past, people have been deathly afraid of the sky, who've lived in countries where drones were dropped, etc. And so when you start with that sort of mentality and you think it's okay, you can end up with a whole lot of money spent on projects that will someday be revealed as very evil. And I guess what I'm trying to get at is, I want to know y'all's perspective on this space thing. Is it just a distraction, or is it a legitimate increasement of imperialism?
I'd go back to what I said earlier.
Distraction.
Yeah, I think it's the expanding and maintaining the Ponzi scheme. They got to find something really big to spend a shit ton of money on. That'd be my main issue with it.
Plus, there's that 21 trillion budget hole that appeared out of apparently nowhere. And anybody who's clued up on conspiracy theories is pretty certain that's basically the secret space project budget. And it's been paid for already. He's just validating it instead of going, oh shit, we spent shit tons of money on a bunch of things we don't need. We should get rid of them. He went, let's start a space force then. Let's make this legitimate. And I could see some serious merit to that particular theory, given the putting forward the idea of a space force. And that kind of implies we can do it, we have the technology.
Well, and of course, all these documentarian channels, like ramping up the hard-ons for things like the Rod from God, and all of these like projects that can essentially destroy whatever the U.S. government wants to from space with very minimal damage and lasting radiation. So, I'm like, with all these people ramping that sort of thing up, I fail to see how it could be anything but imperialism. But I am definitely willing to hear.
Well, I am wondering if we are going into the first great American galactic empire. Gaga
would not surprise me.
The Gauge era.
I know it's useless having it there, but haven't they found oil on Titan and also possibly on Mars now? I thought there was some major announcement coming out for Mars. And of course,
for Mars, they found methane. For Titan, they found the whole fucking planet's made of methane. Or planetoid, I should say. Or moon. But yeah, basically, there's a lot of methane.
Precursor of life. So, like, previous life.
Mars, maybe. Mars, maybe. Titan, probably not. It's a bit too chilly, and it's just one of those weird effects of temperature and methane turning into water.
All right, because
and then
we
creating
need
its own ecosystem.
so we need a space force to protect the Earth from the aliens.
Well, there's nothing to say that there isn't something out there. The probability has always been quite high that some other life form exists. From a statistical probability perspective, it's inevitable. It's just whether or not we ever encounter them that is the indelible question that nobody. It's the elephant in the room when you're talking about anything to do with space. Are the UFOs real? Or are they just figments of your imagination or horseback firing? It's not.
Well, see, here's my problem with UFOs, flat Earth, that sort of thing, is that they have all these quote photographs, and I'm supposed to believe that not only is your smudge on the photo a UFO, but that your smudge is, uh, legitimate, that you didn't smudge it, that you didn't create that. Like, I'm supposed to, and it's the same thing with flat Earth. Like, I'm supposed to believe that that your photos from space that you took with your model rocket are 100% legitimate, that you didn't include any sort of lens on the camera that would change anything. I'm supposed to embrace that yours is not photoshopped, that yours is not edited. But I'm not supposed to believe NASA. Fucking okay, that's believable.
Yeah, but NASA's the state.
Yeah, but NASA's
And
okay.
when it comes
So
to
if
flat
Trump
Earth, though,
says
you're
that-
right.
If Trump says drinking water is good for your health, I'm not going to stop drinking water.
No, that's fair enough. But you know what I mean.
Yeah, I don't think those two.
Part of the problem, those two concepts are not really comparable because one is statistically significant and one is fucking retarded.
Well, what's
I mean,
statistically
flat Earth.
significant about saying that, like, oh, okay, so I get what you're saying now. Okay, yeah, statistically significant. How though? Like, how are UFOs statistically significant?
Well, the number of sightings due to the internet have shot up. A lot of them taken just on like everyday phones, not on old school camcorders or everything. And they'll just go, "What the fuck is that?"
I mean, maybe.
And there are some unusual sightings on the moon and in other locations. Secure Team 10 does a good like general overview, and they don't claim necessarily any of these are guaranteed. They're just saying these need further investigation. Why is NASA pixelating this stuff? That kind of thing.
Well, I
And
would absolutely
flat
love
Earth.
to know.
Flat Earth, though, mate, is just beyond insane.
Why?
Honestly,
I mean,
there is no
they-
logic to it.
There are plenty of collapse. Oh, okay. Hey, Skip, how you doing?
Hey, good. How about you?
Reasonable. Why don't you introduce yourself and let people know who you are and where they can find you?
Okay. This is Skip, also known as Collapsitarian, and you can find me on Twitter either at the Free Rifleman, or you can find me at Collapsitarian1. Everywhere else, I probably don't want to talk to you.
Welcome. Hey, I wanted to add something too about this whole UFO thing. I've seen a quote unquote UFO before. I was watching a constellation for a meteor shower one morning while walking to work, and I saw an object in the sky flying at a very high speed. And the first assumption I had is that it was one of the meteors. And it went like halfway across the sky, the visible sky to me, and it was very high, a single white light. And at the end, it made a J-hook turn, again at an incredibly high speed, and then disappeared. And there is no current craft that's possible to do something like that. And I saw that with my own eyes. Of course, I didn't record it because I didn't have anything to record it with at the time. But even I've seen weird shit that's not explainable. And yeah,
Yeah.
the two don't compare. Like the flat Earth thing has been proven false by multiple scientists. It's a laughable thing. Like on social media, when somebody tells me that they're for that, I immediately just block them.
Yeah.
And
Well,
the Department of Defense right now they're releasing
just
videos. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
The Department of Defense, a lot of people, even Wired.com has an article up about it because they're, like the title of the article is "What's Up with Those Pentagon UFO Videos." So right when Trump is talking about creating a sixth military force called Space Force, the Pentagon is releasing military video of unknown flying objects that they don't have a signature or the capabilities of any known craft on this planet. Like way beyond any technology that we are currently capable of having that anybody knows about. So it is kind of strange timing, basically. And the videos that they release are very similar to the types of things that I've seen. And NASA has some of those videos too. So it's way more likely that kind of stuff is real than flat Earth.
Yeah, I mean the probability of either us having, shall we say, space travel technology that is above what our current grade is quite high. Our probability of having encounters with these people is quite high. The problem is that nobody wants to believe that is the case at the moment, or nobody wants the people to believe, even if they already do. I think most people would be willing to accept aliens existing more so than most of the conspiracy theories out there.
Before this goes too much further, I'm just gonna say, for the purposes of this call, make sure to have your mic muted when you're not speaking. Makes the call go smoothly. And what was I gonna say? Well, I don't completely disavow the concepts of UFOs, but it seems very unlikely given the currently known laws of physics.
Somebody proposed a warp drive being feasible, and somebody also, I mean, quantum mechanics says that you can have two electrons paired billions of miles away, and if you affect one, it affects the other one instantaneously.
Sure.
And it doesn't do it through faster than light travel, it does it through entanglement. Well, the same principle could be done for larger forms of matter. It's just a matter of working out how.
Yeah, it's all magic till we figure it out, basically.
So, to get closer to the original topic, though, when y'all think of Afghanistan, what is your first thought in terms of whether or not the U.S. had any business ever being there? Because Scott Horton had a really good book called Fool's Errand on how the war in Afghanistan is a complete farce. And I would like to get other people's views on this.
Well, the military there is actually guarding poppy fields. The Taliban shut down the heroin production out of that country, and then as soon as the U.S. invaded it with the coalition, the heroin production shot right back up. So, I mean, that right there is an obvious thing. Supposedly, there's rumors of a lot of lithium there as well, and of course, the major powers on the planet right now need lots of lithium as well.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of metals in their hills.
And yeah, and that kind of stuff can be scanned for from the sky basically these days. That's no longer magic. It's legit.
Well, right, because they can bounce a signal off of it, like an energy signal. I forget exactly how it's done, but they can bounce that signal off of it and see basically based on depth and the reflection back at the transmitting device, what kinds of metals are very likely there.
Ground penetrating radar or LiDAR can do very similar things.
I think it might be a combination of those.
They do the same thing with planets and moons and stuff too. Like how they're looking for
they found
ozone or oxygen or methane or something on a planet or a moon.
Yeah, they found a hidden city in the jungles of Mexico, I think, from the Aztec period, which had been completely overtaken by the land. But they basically did a LiDAR scan of the area and found that the largest ancient city probably known to man existed in this location, and it was just basically completely overgrown, possibly taken out by a volcano.
Send me a link for
Yeah,
that later. I'd love to hear more about that.
when I think about in
I'll have to dig it up.
Afghanistan, yeah, when I think about Afghanistan and why we're there and shit, I go back to what I studied and shit and tried to be in was the whole Secret Service shit, right? The clandestine affairs, whatnot. The thing about that when I started looking that up is all the
Okay, where'd everybody go?
Yeah, that's a good question. One moment. Yeah, this happens sometimes. Everybody drops out. It's like no doing of mine. Google for some reason starts to kick people randomly. So to the 12 viewers who are here listening right now, I hope you stick around. There's plenty more of this discussion to be had. I don't know why it fucking does that, but it's certainly something that's annoying and not something I enjoy.
Because my connection's dropping. I'm going to
Well,
go to a better location.
Yeah, well, your connection dropped because of Google. It happened to like 4 people all at once. So
We mentioned too many keywords at once.
well, shit. I was just about to say some real cool shit, and then all of a sudden it's like, nah, Niggs, you're gone.
Yeah,
Like, what the fuck?
I was actually a little irritated because I wanted to hear where you were going at with this. This is Skip.
Oh, yeah. Hola, Skip. Yeah, okay. Anyway, so where I was going with it was all the branches knew about it. What was going to happen in Afghanistan, 9/11, all that good shit, right? Even if you don't believe that it was inside job, either way, there's still documentation that every single branch knew it. CIA knew it, FBI knew it, fucking the state of New York knew it, right? And so what really gets, it's really kind of fucky too, is like that's part of the reason they made the Patriot Act and shit. And the NSA, Department of Homeland Security, they decided to make all that shit because it forced communication through each agency, which is kind of funny because usually they do talk to each other, but that was one of the biggest reasons why they created all the other things they created. And it was a big, huge, like, okay, let's do this too, because now we can actually have a reason for it. And what the NSA was up and running in like fucking record time of like 6 months or something stupid like that. It was insane, guys.
well, so on that level, then, in terms of trying to spread this influence, how do you think we can sort of reach people to tell them that the best way forward is not to trust the U.S. military? Any of you?
Well, that
Point
reminds
to
me.
his track record.
Yeah, why would you trust them? Actually, there was an article on Zero Hedge about this specifically today. Some of the Southern Front military forces in Syria got a farewell message from the United States military today, basically saying, hey, you're on your own now. Good luck.
Anybody else?
Well, it's like a business, right? It's the ultimate business. And so, because death in the military is such a business, why would you trust your business partner? Even if you know that they're going to be doing great shit with you, don't trust them fully because they have that kind of power. You know, you always want to make sure that you have your chickens checked too.
So,
I'm not
like,
saying
keep
like,
them at arm's reach.
yeah, keep them at arm's reach. Like you can hug them and shit, but don't be like, hey, let me show you my thing. You know, that kind of thing. You don't want to get too personal with your business partner, and which is what they always do. They get real nice and personal, like, hey, we're gonna do this with you. Yeah, you like that butt fucking, didn't you? Guess what? We just raped you with a road cone, so you're on your own now. Later, you're too loose for us anymore. Like, So
Iraq's a good example of that. You know, for the Iran-Iraq war, we provided Saddam with chemical and biological weapons to make sure that he won. You know, there's pictures of Rumsfeld shaking his hand as a hero.
the CIA helped do that shit
used,
too.
yeah, and then we turn around and use that exact excuse as a reason to invade and destroy him.
I actually have a little bit simpler of an approach to this, being as how I've got a little bit of background with the military and with government service, just in general.
Why don't you tell people what that background is before proceeding? Because I think they'd be interested.
Sure. Okay. So since 1990, I have either worked for the U.S. Army, either directly as a service member or as a contractor. Sometimes contracts are individual contracts, meaning like independent. And then other times it's actually working for a different company. I am not a government civilian per se. And so I have a little bit of understanding of exactly how the whole system works, and the fact that it's just nothing more than an elaborate welfare machine. The whole system is just a giant elaborate excuse for them to borrow and spend money.
So on
and
that level, then go ahead.
Yeah, so to continue to perpetuate the debt is literally the whole process. The whole concept is just literally get as many people dependent on either government employment, government services, or government intervention, whether it's military or stuff like that. And so from that perspective, from the military side of the house, understand that there's only one group of people that they work for, and that's the political class. The political class are who make the decisions for the military. The political class are who make decisions of whether they deploy, whether they get pay raises, whether they deploy to shitty places or nice places. You know, literally, what is their spending budget every year? Okay. And so what that means when you say whether the people should trust the military or not, okay, the best way to approach it is, would you trust a politician? Because the military only carry out what the political will is. That's it. That's all they do. Sometimes they like it, sometimes they don't. You know, under Obama, I can honestly tell you the military climate was, you know, basically like, yeah, we can't fucking wait until this is over, you know, which is exactly how I felt when I was serving during the Clinton years. I was just like, I cannot believe that somebody has not taken this motherfucker out. Seriously, that is exactly what I used to think about Clinton.
Well, I mean, so multiple responses there. So first,
Sure.
I'm assuming you don't mind the running joke among anarchists and in some circles that the troops are welfare whores.
No, not at all, because it's absolutely true. You know, most of them, they have a sense of duty and patriotism that has been jammed into their heads from the time that they went into government indoctrination. You know, just like I can't remember the guy's name off the top of my head, but he said, you know, Neil Bortz said, you know, of course, you know, government schools will teach children that government is wonderful. You know, just like Catholic schools teach, teach kids that the church is wonderful. And so it literally is an indoctrination program. And in fact, it's a recruiting program. This kind of hits close to home because my daughter's boyfriend, my daughter's boyfriend, they just graduated high school. And he's going into the military. And him and I, we had a long talk. His dad's retired military, retired Army. And we had a long talk. And I'm like, look, you've got to understand something. He's like, but my college will be paid for. That is literally what people do. They're just like, you know what? I will. It doesn't matter how bad. It doesn't matter. That's right. It doesn't matter how bad 4 years will be because I won't have debt. So,
Well,
I mean, at least they're thinking from that perspective. Maybe they'll get through the 4 years. They won't have any debt. Then they get their college paid for. I get it. You know, I did the same thing. I had my college paid for by my GI Bill. So I get it. I understand. But I wanted him to at least understand, go in this with your eyes open and realize you cannot fucking trust anything that you are told.
well, and
Well,
you
and once
sign all your
something's
rights away.
well,
You
right,
sign
and once something's done, you can't undo it. What were you gonna say, Finian?
Probably lost track of all the stuff I wanted to reply to, but I I joined the Army Reserves in 1989. I'm 45, so like right out of high school. I hadn't graduated yet, and I joined for quote unquote patriotic reasons. And boy, was I fucking surprised when I got to basic training, and almost everybody, even in 1990, they were not there for patriotic reasons. They didn't give a damn about individual liberty. They didn't care about protecting people that needed protected. They were there even that far back, either because a judge told them they had to go there or they had no other option that was better in life. And then fast forward like 4 or 5 years, and then almost everybody that I knew that was joining just to pay for their college, like you said. They didn't give a damn about people's rights. They didn't care whether war was justified or not. They didn't care where the money came from. All they cared about is getting their college paid for. It was disgusting. I rarely found somebody that was a true friend of mine, which means somebody furthering individual liberty. And I had serious problems with most people in my, I went from Army Reserve to Army Guard to Air Guard, and my experience was horrible basically because most people were not in it for the right reasons, and the whole system itself is jacked up. And yeah, you shouldn't have any faith at all in it. And like you were saying, your sister's um,
No, it's
fiance or whatever,
it's my daughter's it's my
your daughter's
daughter's boyfriend. So I mean,
boyfriend.
they're 17 and 18. They're not engaged or anything like that, but they're serious because it's puppy love. And
I
I just he leaves like in a week, and I told him, I'm like, look, and my daughter's like, Dad, please don't, because he was in junior ROTC. You know, he was the company commander for the junior ROTC. So I mean, he is committed to this whole process. And
So
I
wait, so
told him,
he's going to be an officer too?
well, no. So I
Okay, because
told him
that's even
this.
worse. We could talk about
Yeah,
that all night, how jacked
yeah.
up it is.
Your soul is gone on that one. I know. You ask Bill Bupert; he'll tell you all about that. And so, because Bill Bupert and I were actually in the Army together, we've known each other since 2000.
Yeah, weren't you gonna try and get him in here? Mind tagging
I
him?
was. I was. Unfortunately, his schedule did not allow for him to be able
Oh,
to
okay.
be here today. But I'm going to try to rope him in on another time because he's actually pretty enjoyable to have in a good conversation like this because he really throws some good tidbits of thought. But the other thing I wanted to address what you were saying just a second ago was also, you're absolutely right. It's exactly the same way with police officers. And I hate to use that word, but I'm trying to be descriptive, like the law enforcement community. And that is that they don't care about rights either. They're literally there because it's a job. They're getting paid. And they get brought in under the ploy that they'll be there to help people. Because before I was in the Army, I was a cop. And so I totally get the whole, believing in the system and all that kind of stuff because I was a cop when Waco happened. And I remember struggling with the whole thing, with what went on in Waco and who it was. And of course, the agency that was involved, the FBI and the ATF. And at the time, I actually wanted to work for the FBI, which is like, I mean, that just makes me shudder right now thinking about it. But
Yep,
I
I've
mean,
been there.
It's okay, mate.
seriously, I mean that.
It's okay. You
Yeah.
admitted you had a problem and you dealt with it.
That's right, exactly. But I mean, the reason why I'm really careful about my last name, kind of making its way out into the Twitter world is because I still have a job and I need to keep it. But at the same time, I have no bones about saying exactly what, the truth is. And the truth is the whole thing is a sham. And there's
Do you have
all
a
these. Go ahead.
Do you have a blue badge or do you have a green badge?
I have a green badge.
Ditto. Okay. Just
Yeah.
wondering.
Yeah.
No further comment required.
Yeah. So I am. Go
Sorry.
ahead.
I'm trying to remember which one's higher.
Well, I was gonna say the reason I was going into special forces at the time I was going in was because I needed the credentials and the paperwork saying I could do what I know I can already do. And that's all I really wanted to get when I was going in there for it. Like I do care about individual liberty, but mine was to break off and make my own little thing. Pretty much a private company that would do that. What special services provide and all that good shit is what I was gonna try to do, but do it my way versus like Blackwater and shit like that.
Right.
I was about to say you were about to be your own Blackwater.
Yeah, exactly. I was about to be my own Blackwater. That's what I still want to do that, but I can't go get the credentials now. I need to get the credentials a different way. And so I also thought about doing the they're in France. They're for hire, the Marines for hire, pretty much.
Yeah, we've talked about this before. You should do CPO, Close Protection Officer. All kinds of
Yeah.
executive protection courses out there, and you'd love it. A great line of work, again, if you don't mind traveling, and I wouldn't do it if you had kids. Too dangerous.
Yeah. I only got a dog, so. But
Yeah.
like so I get the whole like going in for the military for certain different reasons. Like mine was a little bit to pay for my college. I was like, hey, it'll get put on hold and I'll get a degree after, whatever. I don't really care. Like I don't care about having a piece of paper that says I know it. If I talk about it long enough, you'll either be like, yeah, this bitch knows his shit, or nah, he doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about at all.
Well, it
So-
used to be a real noble profession. I mean,
Well, yeah.
the military in general, it's like defend your nation and go and do righteous things. And of course, it's long, long away from that now.
Yeah,
And
and I
Back
still
when
believe in those
defense was
qualities.
defense. When defense
Yeah.
was defense instead of offense disguised as defense very poorly, yeah.
Right, when you
And I
weren't
still believe in
supporting
those values.
imperialism or an empire.
And I would
Yeah.
tell you probably the last time that it was truly an honorable profession was probably about the same time that everybody was leaving the American Revolution and going back and putting their farms back together.
It's funny because I was going to say the same thing as I was about to say when people still use muskets.
Right, exactly. And the failed Second American Revolution, which, unfortunately, under the guise of slavery has now, has a bad taste in its mouth. Any future American revolution would probably be viewed the exact same way. It would be, oh, well, they were all white people, so it was racist. And so they were a bunch of white supremacists or something. And so, I mean, literally that, understand that everything will always be painted in that level of color because that's a communist tactic.
True fucking story.
Yeah. I mean,
They muddy
it's
the
a
waters of
communist
everything.
tactic. Yeah. I mean, they actually, I can't remember what year it was. It was in the 50s where they basically said, from here on out, anybody that, gets in our way, we paint them, as a racist. We paint them as an anti-Semite. We paint them as, whatever has a foul smell and taste to people. That's what you label them as. And that's
Yeah,
exactly. I mean, if you think about it, that is a commie tactic. That you see that all the time. Yeah.
Well,
just because the tuna stinks doesn't mean it might taste good. No.
Yeah.
Fuck.
Yeah. And understand, whenever I say commie, I really mean commie/fascist because they're all the
Yeah,
same.
I know.
yeah,
I beg to differ that this is a commie tactic. I think that this is a tactic. I think it's used by
It is by
everybody.
Sure.
Oh, I use it
Sure.
too, for sure.
Yeah,
my
When all people are
that's-
commie, I'm
definition-
using it.
Exactly. I mean, when I use the word commie and throw it out there, I can't. The only thing I can that's worse is partly pedophile, and that is another level.
I do make the point pretty regularly that that state communists are different from anarcho-communists, and anarcho-communism is possible. So I would like to throw that out there, that not all communists are the same way as the sort of Maoists and tankies.
Well, that my preferred term is collectivist, and that implies collectivism by force. So, of course, you can have a voluntary commune, and as long as everyone's voluntarily there, that's fine.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I would
yeah,
agree. I would agree. There are some ANCOMs that I get along with just fine, and as long as they don't push marks on me, I get along with them fine.
Well, yeah,
Statism is like
especially if they're
religion.
an
Just don't shove it down my throat.
Right.
Well,
exactly. Well, it is a religion.
Well, it is.
Exactly.
Yeah, if you read Larkin Rose's book, The Most Dangerous Superstition, you'll get a lot more info on that. But
yeah,
what I was gonna say is, in terms of tactics, what do you think is the primary way that the U.S. government gets people to accept this sort of thing? Because I have my theories, and I've talked about them on Moment of Rage, which, if anybody's interested in that, is a show that's syndicated to IPM Nation, Alternative Independent Radio, and journalisticrevolution.com, and you can find that weekly. And I've discussed it on streams in the past, that I think that a lot of this is just a propaganda effort. But what do you think is the chief element? And I'd like to start with Claire, since she hasn't said as much as she did the last stream. What do you think is the primary driver of propaganda in terms of convincing people to swallow basically the statist cock and accept what they have to say?
Well, it's pretty obvious, but the term fake news, when you are deeming anything fake news as an accusatory tone, then you're basically saying that it has no value, it has no merit to anybody, and therefore it should be, relegated to the dustbin. And that's not the case. We all know this, particularly people who pay any sort of attention to independent and alternative media. And the term fake news was pretty much born of a paid propaganda campaign to smear the independent media because it had such an effect on the last election. All of the pieces are there. It's all there in public document and everything else. So I would say, for propaganda's sake, catchphrases are the most effective, the most prevalent, the easiest way to ensnare people to do what it is that you want. And when you have everybody pointing at one another saying, no, that's fake, no, that's fake, no, that's fake. And you also have, the word of the year for, I can't remember what year, but recently, post-truth, then you have this environment where everything is kind of surreal and everything is up in the air, and people are even more, nervous and anxious and perhaps scared than even normal. So the people who don't really know the truth are more prone to be reaching to government to say, hey, please fix this. And to them, that means get rid of the fake news, abolish this scourge on our existence. And
Wrong
that means exactly. And that's the abolish.
You got to be kidding me. It happened again?
Yeah.
What the
Fucking
fuck?
hell. I don't know why this happens. I didn't kick anybody, and if I did, it wouldn't have happened all at once. I do not doubt that with what I've been discussing lately, the government is actively interfering in this shit. This is Alphabet agency. It's the company is called Alphabet. Fuck you, Google.
I'd like to take a moment to appreciate the Washington Post and Jeff Bezos and the CIA and their little deal and their constant fucking monitoring of my shit. I'm tired of it.
Well, it happens a lot in your streams, Jeremiah. Again, I wish there was an alternative to Google Hangouts, but from what I've understood, there is none. There's no other place we can do this?
Well, there's no other place that doesn't require a much better computer than I have. Because my computer, like when I tried OBS for Discord streams a short while back, it got CPU encoder overload or something. Anyway, I don't want to get too far away from what she was saying. Could you finish your sentence? Do you remember what you were saying before you were censored by the government?
No.
Is this
I was
Claire
at a
Wolf?
point.
I wanted to bring up one thing related to what she was saying. I refer to most people as well-programmed robots, and they're dangerous. And all the way back to William Casey, from the CIA director. I mean, he stopped being director in 1987, and of course he's famous for this quote. It says, "We'll know our disinformation program is complete when everything the American public believes is false." And
There's
currently,
controversy on
today,
that.
if it's true or not, well, currently today, whether it's true or not, propaganda and fake news is legal. They can use propaganda in the United States news, total lies, and spread it as news, and it's legal. I mean, just take a second to think about that. Like, how did we get here? And that's
Yeah.
pretty fucked up.
Well, and also, how did we get to the
that was
point
like
where-
half a decade ago when that happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
That has been the case for a very long time now, which is why when fake news arose as a term, it was very specific and all at once, and it kind of encompassed all of these mainstream outlets who were suddenly pinpointing alternative and independent media as, "Hey, you're the devil, and this is why."
Well, let's be honest
there is
here.
nothing more obvious.
Let's be honest here. It's been more than half a decade, like half a century, or even that fake news has been used to justify war. There's been two major justifications for war: an atrocity or financial, one or the other. Really old historic wars were usually financial. It was rarely ever you needed an atrocity to go to war. When they had the first intercontinental war, which was sort of World War One light. It was a bunch of simultaneous wars that all the empires were waging against each other all over the map. And that then yielded the peace treaties that eventually led towards World War One. Ever since World War One, it has been an atrocity-based instigation system to start a war. It has not really been resource-based. That is maybe the primary driver behind it in most cases, but it's not the primary cause. Before then, the primary cause and the primary driver were known. It was, we want money from France. We want money from Spain. We want money from all these other places, and we're going to conquer those places to get it. That was basically the premise, and it either worked or it didn't.
Well,
And
and
the problem-
additionally, like when a lot of this stuff is funded, it's funded with that sort of like to get back to her thing about fake news. The Lügenpresse was a term that was used for a really long time in World War II by Hitler and the people involved in his administration, to try and discredit anybody who would say, "Hey, this guy's kind of crazy. Let's move against that." And to be completely fair, there is a Lügenpresse. There has always been a Lügenpresse, and to say that there's not, it would be a bald-faced lie, and it would be a dramatic denunciation of reason and logic. But at the same time, he used the term Lügenpresse a lot the same way that Trump does to discredit anything that goes against his image. It's not necessarily even to find out the lies, it's to find out who goes against him in a very specific way and try and make a target out of that person. What were you going to say, Claire?
Well, if you think about it, the extension of so the fake news propaganda campaign came up for the election. And it makes perfect sense if you understand that it's not red and blue, but purple. That
right.
When you extend it, what he's doing has nothing. It is in line with the fake news propaganda campaign. He's trying to fillet the press as if they're all fake. This is all
Well-
propaganda. I mean, the idea is that we have to be kind of shuffled and siphoned into this particular one narrative. And that one narrative has been switching a lot depending on which country we want to go to war with or whatever. But there is always a reason that we're being shuffled into one position. And it's all related. And I think people
Right.
fail to see like where, you know, this has been kind of the same thing all along. It doesn't matter whose administration it is or who's president or what this, that, or the other thing. The details are not as important as the trend and where it's going and what it's trying to accomplish.
Well, right. And is it any surprise to anyone that the symbology lovers, that these cultists have made two colors that when combined make purple, and purple is long considered a color of regality? Is that any surprise to anybody? Anyway, just
No. And
Yeah.
I mean, and if you look at the thing is that people don't really respect the fact that at the moment we are in a cold civil war situation within the state, because there are, as I said, a lot of indictments out. There's a lot of cases being closed on pedophilia rings with extremely high profile individuals involved. A lot of unusual names have been outed in the past year that people weren't expecting to see ever come out in the press. I mean, there's been a lot of weird scandals breaking all over the map. You just have to look for them to find them. And when you've got this much activity going on in one go, you got to ask, where's it all leading to? You take out the ground crew and then you work your way up. It's a RICO action basically going on in the background. And it's very badly reported. It's only reported by like one or two websites that I'm aware of. And both of them are classified as obviously fake news. So I obviously think that they're legitimate because everybody's shouting how illegitimate they must be. And it's that kind of principle. If you're crying wolf all the time, and you're proven to cry wolf all the time, why should anybody believe anything you say? And that's how I feel of CNN, MSNBC, Fox, all of the big channels. I don't bother really with any of them except a cursory glance occasionally just to see what madness they've come out with now.
But I have to take issue with that. I have to take issue with that. And there's a very important reason. The entirety of the point of the fake news campaign is to make people question things that are actually reality and that are actually fact. And trust me, more than any other person, I distrust mainstream media. But for everybody on the whole to distrust everything and say, I won't do this, I won't follow that organization, I won't follow that group, I won't follow that media company, is really distressing because it adds to the idea that censorship is okay, because you're not allowing the viable spectrum of things to proliferate, and you're not considering their opinions and following their links and finding out for yourself. And I don't expect the average person to do that, but still that is supposed to be our responsibility.
It's the subversion of truth. It's the subversion of truth.
The problem is, for me, the only problem with that is if you know that they're lying to you, why believe any of it? If they've been proven to lie to you.
But they don't tend to brazenly lie. The tendency of mainstream media is not the brazen lie and the falsehood and the untruth. The tendency is to, as propaganda would dictate, and this makes sense, to provide you with kernels of truth disguised in whatever climate or atmosphere they choose to give it. So you have to take whatever it is that they give you with a grain of salt, absolutely. But it is our duty
just read
to
Raw
look
Dogs.
it's our duty to look at the things that they give us and to source them and everything else. I mean, This is
So-
all through the lens
let-
of America first, but come on.
let-
I mean, like, this is our responsibility as citizens.
Right.
I really
Well,
feel that.
Claire, before we proceed any further, tell everybody what outlets you've written for and what your experience was there.
I started at the Pontiac Tribune on St. Patrick's Day in 2015. And then I moved on to Anti-Media and Free Thought Project, Mid-Press News. I mean, I don't know. The stuff that I've written has been republished so many times. I've seen it in Polish before, so it's around.
Yeah. And now you're at the Mind Unleashed, right?
I'm at the Mind Unleashed right now. I haven't written in a very long time because it has been my experience that every single thing that I write now is ghosted by Facebook and Twitter and everybody else. So it's like anti-profitable for my boss to even pay me to do stuff. It's kind of ridiculous.
Are you?
What
on
is your
Steam?
last
Sounds
name,
like you need to be.
Claire? Your last name,
Burnish.
Claire?
It's Burnish, B as in boy, ERNISH, like burnish the wood, but with an E instead.
Okay. No, I have read some of your things. I wasn't sure if you which Claire you were, because there's a couple Claires.
Yeah,
I'm
Claire,
sure I've read it because I've read Anti-Media quite heavily, and a number of the other ones that you mentioned.
Yes, I always
And,
know if it's a good website, if it's blocked where I work. If it's blocked where I work, then I know that it's a good website. It sucks that I can't get to it while I'm at work, but I just use my phone.
You asked like what my experience was with those places, and it kind of had been the same thing where if I pick an extraordinarily explosive topic to write about, then inevitably it's suppressed at some point. It seemed as if when I moved from outlet to outlet, just for whatever reasons, it seemed that there was kind of like a rebirth and I was allowed to have the algorithms back, and all this. And then suddenly it was cut off and I was suppressed again. And this has happened over and over and over again. And I know that some of it is connections that I have to people. Like I interviewed John Kiriakou and things like that. I understand that. But it became a terrifying thing for me because the First Amendment, well, what is said in the First Amendment are my primary drivers of truth. If you are not able to speak how you want to speak, when you want to speak it, then your thought is being restricted, and that is unacceptable. So,
Right, yeah. We need to be doing everything we can to support the so-called alternative media. You, Jeremiah, everybody that's in this fight, basically. Anybody spreading truth. And all the main media, CNN, Fox News, everything, they're all co-opted by the CIA. I mean, you guys can go out there and watch those interviews where Congress will ask them specific questions like, do you have any assets in X news agency? And he'll be like, I refuse to comment. Meaning, yes, they fucking do. They control those agencies completely. So your message isn't getting out. I mean, the whole conspiracy theorist term was, of course, Jesus fucking Christ. What I was talking about did it again? This is ridiculous.
Yeah, I have zero control over it too. Like zero control. I don't know why this keeps happening. I have zero control over this sort of thing, and it's very frustrating. But if anything, this is fucking proof that
Your voice isn't getting out. What the fuck?
Bouncy.
they're disrupting my stream actively. This can't be accidental. This is fucking bullshit.
This is the kind of thing, though, I've got to tell you, this is the kind of thing, and I'm not trying to make myself an example because I've seen it with other people too. This is not unique to me. It's just, there have been alternative journalists who were targeted, and what happens is, like, I have everything public on Facebook. Everything that I post is public. It has been for a very long time. And I will post something and nobody interacts with it for an hour. And with 11,000 supposed followers, that's a little odd. And so I would ask a friend to come and take a screenshot. Like, what do you see on my timeline? Because I made the post public, and they would send me a screenshot, and my post was just not even there. And that's ghosting. And that's what the state does in cooperation with the corporations. And that's the aspect that people fail to see. People defend Facebook for censoring because they say, well, it's a private format and you sign the user agreement. And what they fail to see is logistically, the size of this corporation has expanded beyond, I would argue, legally, the definition of a corporation. It's expanded so far beyond it that there needs to be additional something keeping an eye on this.
Well, what I would say is
when you're censoring the media actively as a platform who described yourself as a media platform and then switch goalposts midway through the game, there is a problem.
All of these like Facebook, social media, I call it socialist media. But the thing is that all of these are co-opted by the actual organizations that are doing the suppression of free speech. Most of them are co-opted or some type of tertiary project that started somewhere inside the Pentagon or one of the Mordor on the Potomac buildings.
Yeah, we can't expect to get truth out of them. And, even all the way back to my days in Google Plus, I stopped doing Google Plus because myself and my friends, we proved for a fact that all of our stuff was being filtered out. Like, you could post something public and the only people seeing it was your small group of friends. So you're basically talking just to your group and you're not spreading the message you're wanting to spread. They're hiding it on purpose. And Facebook and Twitter and all these other sites have been proven to do the exact same thing, which is why we need alternatives like Steemit.
And Minds.
I'm worried about Minds because it's still centralized, but I don't know.
Well, the only problem I have with Steam is it's still a bit clunky when it comes to trying to be able to do large amounts of activity. It's very restrictive when it comes to bandwidth.
I go back to decentralization. I think that the more decentralized efforts are, the more successful they'll be. Now, initially, all of us, we're not neighbors. So outside of our own efforts, right? I don't know what any one of you are actually doing to try to further, realization of what's really happening and what the truth is and things like that. And quite frankly, I don't really need to, because I have, like, in my own neck of the woods, my own efforts, which are not Twitter, by the way. Twitter is just me being able to, it's really my coping mechanism. It's my way of coping with what I see as real fucking lies everywhere. And it's like, I at least have been able to find a semi-decent audience of people that are like, yeah, this stuff's bullshit. And that actually is good, because that's kind of like my way of being able to cope through an 8-hour day of what I have to look at and deal with.
Well, and for me, like, Twitter is really interesting because it forces me to coalesce my thoughts into smaller portions. So I have to be able to really give a condensed version of what I feel is reality, or I have to be willing to write a really long thread. And as a result, like yesterday, I don't know if anybody was watching this argument I had with this fucking, like, this person was basically saying that the way etymology has classically been studied does not matter. And they were, and fucking this argument lasted maybe 6 or 7 hours.
Too long.
But it got to the point where this person was essentially like, this other person, not the person who was arguing with me, was like, you're typing faster than I can read. How much caffeine did you take today? And I'm like,
I saw that.
Like 1,800 milligrams. Fucking. Yeah,
Hey,
I just refuse to use Twitter for anything. I don't use Twitter. If I ever were to use Twitter, I'd just only ever post the Dust Brothers, "This Is Your Life," and just that's it. That I'd never post another thing ever again. And
Twitter is something I don't interact with. Twitter can be fun if you just throw shit up there and let it fester and never examine it.
There's
It's
no better
process.
source for breaking local news, though. That's the main reason why I got back on it as my Liberty Pro PI business account. Because if I want to
That's
see
fair
something
enough,
that happened in my city as quickly as I can, Twitter is the way to do it. So it
That
is
is
useful
That's
true.
in
fair
one way.
enough for
I,
the
I kind of
US.
use it. I use it as my advance warning for the for collapsitarianism.
Yeah, am I just like going into what that is? Because I'm making a shirt for that very shortly here. So
Oh, okay, that's exciting. All right, so just real quick, collapsitarian is not a new term. It's not something I actually made. It is something I've sort of branded or rebranded or reshaped. It's a term that gets used in people who like bad news initially. And so people who say, oh, the economy's never going to recover, and they're economists, they're kind of dubbed as collapsitarians among their economist brothers, quote unquote economists. And so collapsitarian is a term that kind of gets thrown around. And then there are people who write for geopolitical, things where they say, oh, things in the Middle East are not going to get better. They kind of get dubbed as a collapsitarian. Well, I've kind of rebranded it a little bit, and I've kind of said, you know what? I've come to the conclusion in all of the different efforts that I've had, my attempts with the Libertarian Party, which of course were a huge failure, and of course it's baked in the cake to be a failure. So I kind of started to look at it and say, you know what? This shit isn't going to get better. And in fact, the only way that it can even improve is to just collapse. Just all of it needs to come underneath the weight of the house of cards and just completely collapse. And then hopefully from a decentralized effort, people can try to start to piecemeal and put their lives back together, almost like in a Jericho sense, like the TV program Jericho. And I thought, okay, all right, let's examine this a little bit. I'm kind of a prepper and a survivalist, and I've done a lot of studies, and I've even taught survival. And so let's look at this. How would this actually be put together? And then I started looking at it and saying, okay, let's take the collapsitarian word and kind of put it on the tail end of libertarian, right? Which we all know means like a million different things anymore. And let's take it and let's say, okay, the realization of the fact that things will not get better from here without things collapsing is literally my new definition of collapsitarian.
right, and that's relatively so multiple responses.
I love this. I cannot love this enough. I just have to say that.
Thank you.
And agreed with that.
Yeah.
Multiple responses. First, we've got comments in the chat that people are getting dizzy looking at the spinning room above you. So mind hitting that little camera button.
Crap! I'm sorry.
You're fine. It's you keep on doing the right thing, and then fuck you, Google keeps on goddamn censoring us and kicking everybody off, except Finian for some reason. But yeah, so you keep on like doing that, and you keep on like trying to do the thing that makes sense, and then it doesn't fucking happen. Anyway, we have.
I'm really glad I have my clothes on.
Right. Well,
you're probably not wearing pants though, right?
I am myself grateful.
I always wear pants because I can't wear a gun without wearing my pants.
Yeah. Well. And I'm sure you would look sort of fine without a shirt on anyway, because you do a lot of work with your hands anyway. So,
I have actually improved my physique quite a bit, and I'm going to continue to do that. I've been on keto.
Yeah, okay.
I've been working out.
I was gonna say, because like you've bought a couple of my shirts and taken selfies, and I've seen like a dramatic improvement between the "guns don't kill people, governments do" shirt and the "burn the fucking system to the."
Exactly.
This like whole manifest love thing is actually pretty cute. It kind of reminds me of like a yoga pants conversation, but I've never had one of those, so
but you wear yoga pants. Hey, Collapse, I got a
If you ask me nicely.
oh my. Collapse, I'm a private investigator in Virginia, and
Yeah.
I think you were the one that said you didn't want your last name getting out there in the Twitter space.
I'd rather not, but I'm sure it is.
Okay, as a PI, I have easy and direct access to DMV records. So when you're
Okay.
walking around your house showing your previous license plates, it makes it very easy for somebody like me to look up your full name. Just saying, man.
Okay. No,
Yeah,
that's
I would
actually
not do
good.
that.
Yeah, although they're not mine, so that would
Oh, all
that
right,
would
well,
be
that
kind of
helps.
interesting.
Yeah.
One's from
Fake
South
docs.
America. Yeah, one's from South America, so good luck on that one. But yeah, that's actually pretty funny.
But okay, so let's get back to the collapsitarianism, because I do like, I sort of like, and I've been saying this way for a long time. I envision rivers of blood and, you know, giant piles of corpses held together with the bodies of infants, and I don't see a whole lot of way around that. And I think that the reason that's going to happen is because, like, there are thousands of species that go extinct every year, and there are, and a lot of those are like, you know, negligible species, like they don't have really much effect. But
Don't mention that casually, because that's an entire other conversation of which I have knowledge, and the
well, no,
extinction thing is completely.
and I'm not saying it casually. I'm saying like that, combined with the fact that people delegate so much of their responsibilities to murderers, that and the fact that they don't look at how their money is created, much less how it's spent, in terms of taxes and all that shit. It's going to burn the world alive, and there's going to be a huge amount of death.
My only point is that is the environment, and what we're doing to it is a separate issue, and it's as, if not more important than what it is that we debate on all of these shows and things.
Right, yeah.
But
yeah, and I don't disagree.
Right, yeah, it's just to bring it up casually. I mean, we're going through an extinction level event that is actually astonishing in scale and scope. So it's, you know,
yeah.
I just want to make sure that that's known.
Before that happens, though, things are going to collapse economically. So I agree that there's damage being done to our environment, but I go back to the interview with Greg Hunter and Bill Holter earlier today that I listened to. The credit system's going to shut down, and the food supply depends on the credit system. And every expert that I listen to, and I am not the expert, I listen to like 100 different experts. I get their news articles, their newspapers, and their newsletters, whatever you want to call it these days, on a month-to-month basis. Every single one of them is talking about how this shit's going to collapse like within the next year or this year. And they're seriously concerned because what's going to happen is all these systems that most people depend upon to eat. This isn't something like you're going to go broke. This is how you survive. All of those systems are going to shut down. And people need to be paying attention to it, because all these experts can't possibly be wrong. And the alternative to that is the true fake news, which is all these mainstream media that make it sound like everything is fine, and it's not. It is far from fine. And the best case scenario that we have is an economic collapse, which will make the Great Depression look like child's play. And the worst case scenario that we're looking at is a global thermonuclear war, which most of us are going to die from.
And honestly, if I could say, a combination of both of those would be great.
Well, it would certainly be
no,
not quite so. I don't really think I could say that.
No, I won't let you say that. No, because that is not the way that this needs to play out. Like this, we are witnessing what it is that the manifestation of all of the ills that we've ever had are playing out right now. But no, it is not okay to say that just let it happen.
No, I understand. I understand that part of my answer is tongue in cheek, but what I will tell you is that, you know, the elites, and whether that's from a political standpoint or whether that's a CEO standpoint, the elites already have their places already designated to protect them in all types of scenarios, to include thermonuclear war, which is why, they really don't have that much to be concerned about. They already have their bunkers and their stuff already buried in the side of mountains. They already have their places to go. And so the only people who will truly suffer are the people who, quite frankly, don't deserve what's coming.
I absolutely agree with you. And I will say that what is coming is a war that, if nuclear weapons are used, then the people are going to understand. I'm concerned that we're deflecting onto nuclear war where it might not be something that comes to fruition, given that the deterrent factor is so great still at this point. And we continue to say, well, nuclear capability is the reason we build up this military capability here, here, and here, when we still have people in the country starving, and we're like, throwing people into detention for arbitrary reasons, even U.S. citizens. So it's a giant morass.
I don't foresee a nuclear war being a feasible option even for the elites. I know they may have fallout shelters and backup plans just in case something goes a bit screw with and one of the people in the group don't play ball. But I consider the dollar fallout being a probability and the Chinese yuan alternative being adopted very quickly by everybody but the US. And the reason I say that is the UK has been looking at it, Europe has been looking at it, Middle East has been looking at it, South America has been looking at it. Pretty much the only places that haven't really been looking at it that much are the US, unless you read Zero Hedge. And when you've got a backup plan, that works. That basically keeps everything running. And it'll keep going for a little while longer as China becomes the main engine.
Yeah.
And then things will go south fairly quickly if the Chinese state doesn't actually follow through with its "we're going full capitalism" policy. And if it does go through with that, then bully, they actually learned something. But if they don't go through with it, and it doesn't look like they're going to go through with it at the moment, then I'm not so certain that things aren't going to go a bit skew-if in a different way, with a global civil war basically occurring.
Yeah, economic collapse would cause that, definitely. It's not
this is the only time that the world reserve currency, for all intents and purposes, aside from the BRICS, has been the dollar, just under the post Bretton Woods system. And of course, it's so hyperinflated, even though it's not technically hyperinflated. The very numbers are secret. They are actually classified now. The real numbers are classified, and the only organization that's been able to track them, and this is kind of funny, the government pays a subscription to him so that they can keep track of the numbers, but they classify it is
shadow stats.
Yeah, shadow stats. Yeah. And so the M3 is the one that is the most accurate, the actual number. And I think if you subscribe to shadow stats, you can get that number. And every now and then I find a place that says this is about where it is, as far as the actual inflation rate. But if you listen to, I think, was it Gold Silver? I think he's got a YouTube channel. I can't
Mike
remember
Malone.
the guy's. Yeah,
Maloney.
Mike Maloney. Yeah, he did a really good explanation of exactly how it's set up and how he believes it will collapse, and how it can't continue. But what I will tell you is they've amazed me at their ability to continue to get blood out of a turnip. It just amazes me that they continue the way they have.
Yeah, they've
And
been playing
It
lots of
doesn't
games.
surprise. It
Like,
doesn't
they've been
surprise
playing
me in the
lots of games.
slightest.
Yeah.
yeah,
The thing is
the
that
Fed. Go ahead.
you've got to understand there are so many emergent technologies out there right now. Any of them could turn the corner. That's the point. And I know that the current system is doomed to collapse as it stands, but that presumes that the economic pie doesn't expand exponentially. Now, let's tie this back to that old Space Force, okay? We know that there's a 21 trillion deficit in the Department of Defense budget alone. That money had to go somewhere. Now, let's presume for a moment it went into a shit ton of metamaterials and loads of stuff that's emergent technologies for most private companies today. Things like graphene and the lifter engines or any kinds of energy field theories that have been coming out recently as well. There's loads of new science basically coming out every single day and new materials being created as a result. Those things are rapidly reaching a peak where the government itself can't even control what is being discovered. And people are finding it out just by playing with it, kind of thing. When you've got that level of new stuff coming about, you're reaching a new type of industrial revolution. We had the information age, then we're going to have the info and meta material age, and then probably very quickly after that, the AI age. Because at that point, I'd expect something like a proper smart AI to be created. It ain't too far off. It ain't here yet, I don't think. Or if it is, it's probably
here.
being powered by 4chan. But
No. The AI stuff that is actually here that has been developed is terrifying in proportion.
What, for Facebook and the like? No, man.
Yeah, Facebook.
Well,
Facebook,
let
AI,
her
and
describe
Twitter
why
is
that is.
Okay.
It's important to understand the depth of what it is that happens beyond what it is that we know. It's interesting, yes, to get documents from the government. Oh, revealed, blah, 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 whatever. That's good and fine, but we know that there are so many more aspects to what's going on behind the scenes. And the funding that you have brought up several times, I don't even know how to pronounce your name, Luthenite, I believe, but the funding deficit that you've brought up several times, I originally wrote about it in June 2015 when the Pentagon came up with $8.5 trillion that it didn't know what it had done with. It's not a secret that this money goes to things that are like decisively nefarious. We can't really deny that fact. The tricky budgeting, they haven't lost the damn money. They've tricked the budget to the point where they can get away with putting the money anywhere it is that they want to. And that's what they're doing. And it's detrimental to everybody. And it's not just like a small matter or anything like that. I hesitate to understand, like, it's not any worse now that it's $110 trillion than it was 3 years ago at 8.5 trillion. There is no glaring hole in this budget. Like, why the people of this country aren't up in arms over this in itself
they're largely
is
disarmed,
astonishing.
of course, but
Yeah, well-programmed robots.
I mean, I can teach people how to make countless explosive devices and gas devices with household objects, but I don't think this is the appropriate stream for that, and I don't think most people would listen because the true disarmament has happened in their brain first.
Yeah.
I can also describe a whole bunch of defense tactics as well, and I can also train people in martial arts. So.
A bunch of people are going to get disconnected if we keep using these keywords.
What, like bomb bridge 9/11 collapse?
Something like that.
Pentagon.
Oh, God.
Pentagon
You guys,
wired
honestly, you
transfer
keep
trunk.
doing this to me.
We're triggering Lupinate.
Well, we're triggering the Great British government, certainly. And fuck you, Queen.
I get worried. I get worried every time I hear a helicopter fly by now when I'm doing one of these streams.
I do. It feels like Standing Rock. The helicopters were up there all the time.
Yeah,
I've just made peace with it.
Let's. I
I've
wasn't
actually-
trying to say
helicopter.
that it was lost money, by the way. I wasn't trying to claim that it was lost money at all. I'm claiming the money's been spent, and it's been spent on things that.
I didn't need to deem it to you. That's
fair
the
enough.
narrative of the thing.
We're all sort of venting frustrations right now.
And I would
Well,
say that it is other people's money, and no one can spend other people's money faster than government.
Oh yeah.
Yes,
Right.
but I didn't mean to. The faux pas is in my court, and I understand, and it wasn't meant to detract from that. But
I don't think you were like saying that directly. I think he may have thought it was implied, but I saw it as just a general statement personally.
See, for me, it's not really even other people's money that's being spent because let's be honest, the taxes haven't paid for this. This is debt. This is pure debt-based financing.
It's the promise of the chattel slavery of future generations.
Exactly. And the point is that if you've got when you've got the promise of taxation, basically, it's like the promise of jam tomorrow. It doesn't really work, but it just causes a lot of problems for everybody later on, and it reduces your services now because you've got to finance the debt.
It's beyond it being a promise to pay by future taxpayers. It's way beyond that. The last stage of an empire is the looting stage. And the West right now is on the very end of the looting stage. Yeah, like, I mean, when Rumsfeld and 9/11 and all that crap happened, it was like 2-point-something trillion that was missing. Now it's
quote,
rumored
missing.
to be
It's gone
like
up by a
20-something
magnitude.
it's
gone up a magnitude.
I think it's 132 trillion last time I checked.
No,
that's with
the missing money.
unfunded liability.
The missing money was 3.2 billion. The missing money, Rumsfeld's missing money.
Well, that particular
way
thing,
more
I'm
than
saying
that.
like in total.
It's way more than that, though. If you're listening to the interviews of like the Bill Holters and stuff of the world,
God, yes, of course
it's
is.
like it's like 20-something trillion right now. And I'll tell you, some of that money went into nuclear shelters. Some of that money went in all these black ops that are going on and paying off all these mercenaries and ISIS forces.
See, now you're really going to trigger Lupin it because he doesn't believe in that shit.
Well, there is a rumor out there.
I believe the CIA created ISIS. I mean, that's like pretty much given.
Fallout shelters.
It's in documentation. You can't argue it. They have created it. It's in documents. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not even classified that State Department-backed so-called rebel forces have been fighting CIA-backed rebel forces. It is so convoluted and fucked up right now that there is no way even the U.S. government can keep track of it. And it is rumored all the way back to Libya that the State Department has its own separate agency that is running guns and doing military operations. So, like when you used to think like no such agency, the NSA didn't exist, and it existed for a long time when nobody knew it did. There are all kinds of government agencies right now, today, that exist that we have no idea about. Because again, classified and compartmentalized intelligence works. Most people think, nah, fuck that. There's no way everybody could keep that a secret. Trust me, it works, and it works really well. Millions and millions of secrets are kept every day, and nobody has any idea about any of it. So
All you
believe
have
me,
to do, all you have to do is keep the workers believing in what they do and the fact that it's defending democracy or it's protecting the nation, and they'll do just about anything.
well, in a 10-year prison sentence, that doesn't help. That also helps too.
I don't know, because you know what? There's an awful lot of interesting things that have occurred since Snowden.
So, we do have somebody new in chat, new to this channel as well. Met him on a stream last night with a bunch of MAGA people. So why don't you introduce yourself and let us, before you do though, make sure to hit that that camera button on your screen there to turn off your camera. But let us know who you are, where you can be found, and what you do.
All right. Can you hear me?
Yeah, your cam's still on though.
Is it really? Son of a bitch.
You got to hit that camera button. There you go.
There it is. Right on.
Yep.
Anyway, my name's I live in Sierra Vista, Arizona. My name's Michael DiCarlo. I'm a retired Navy chief. I did 20 years. I was in the submarine force. Did recruiting tours. I'm in my garage now, so if you hear wind or whatever or dogs barking, I apologize. Yeah, I couldn't get this set up inside. I've been retired. I went in '88. Joined for the 600 fund the 600 ship Navy. I retired in 2008, and after I retired, I worked as a contractor for the Army and taught electronic warfare and intelligence. To the intelligence stuff, and all of the stuff was really to the ground, to get the ground truth out there to the soldiers that were deploying, to give them the increased survivability rate to come home and drink beer and make babies for the rest of their life. I'm married. I got a dog. Got two daughters, two granddaughters.
All right.
Experience soured me. I'm not the same person I used to be, and cost me a family. Cost me seeing my grandkids on a daily basis for everyone to see them. But that's me.
And what is DeCarlosDanger.com? What do you discuss there?
Oh, you know what? Shit, sorry about that. I've had that's a blog I started a year ago. I got it on Facebook and Twitter. But what I do is I write about the tyranny in government, and primarily it's so easy to pick apart the federal government because I was in it so long. It's not even a challenge. The hard part is it's the local government that is actually the wheels that we can have an effect in, and understanding how that works. And they've convoluted it so much, making it multi-layered, that it's not difficult to see if you've had like experiences like I've had working in government for so long, but they don't even give you guys the opportunity to learn about it because they don't teach you about it. And that's
you're
frustrating.
very right about that. And I agree with the local government. You're very right about that. I think we've had kind of similar experiences. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I see exactly what you're saying.
Hear, hear.
Oh, no worries.
And on that level, you say you're ex-Navy. Mind discussing your take on the discussion we've had so far on imperialism, and saying if we missed anything that you might have extra insight on?
You know, it's really pretty funny that you guys are on that topic and that you mentioned it yesterday, because I'm actually in the middle of reading two books pretty much about imperialism. One's called The Crucible of War. It's by Fred Anderson. It's about the lies that were told during the French and Indian War that inspired people to go out and serve and help exterminate the Native Americans. And the other one is The Savage Wars of Peace. That's by Max Boot, and that's about everything that and you got to remember that the real imperialists here are the guys that wear white and black for their uniforms, and that would be the Navy, because they are the arm of the State Department that actually they're the trade enforcers.
Of course, I would argue that the real imperialists are the corporations who make a shit ton of money off of this shit, but go ahead.
No, I understand. I'm just trying to, say we're on the same page here, man.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, no, I wasn't trying to undercut that.
No, brother. I understand when they changed the words Naval Academy or or something naval, which is like attached to your stomach that attaches you to the rest of the world, to Navy. they're changing the corporate part right in front of your eyes, but they're convincing you it didn't happen.
Oh yeah.
You know?
I'm sorry, but this is me off to no end. I understand. I understand the need for people to be accepted and stuff. I mean, there are so many ways that I feel kind of dejected by society. Whatever. I don't give a fuck. I'm so sad that these options are going away from people. It's distressing, I think.
Yeah.
I think. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. I just wanted to say the word yeah, so go ahead.
No. No, I agree with you, and I mean, I'm almost 50. I'm 48 years old, right? So I mean, Ronald Reagan told us this stuff, that freedom and liberty is only one generation from extinction, because you don't know what you didn't have if you've never had it.
I'm 44. I know.
I'm 48, so I.
Shit, I turned 47 in August, and you and I should talk, because I live in Sierra Vista as well. This is Skip. I go by Collapsitarian. We're gonna have to connect somehow, other than right now, because we live in the same town. We've done the same work. I was electronic warfare as well. Worked in the Army. I was in the Army for 15 years. I've been in and out of different contracts and done some independent stuff, and I've done independent contractor work. And I helped set up the Army Electronic Warfare Officer course out at Fort Sill. So you and I, we probably have actually
Are
met
you willing
each other.
to talk about that at all? If you're willing to talk about that at all, I'm more than curious.
Yeah,
About
same here.
About what?
About your
The kinds of
experience
things
and
you
what-
did.
Exactly. Your entire experience. Like,
yeah, sure. What do you want to know? And then I don't fill your ear.
no, I mean like an actual time and place where we pick your brain and ask and talk and kind of figure it out, because it
Well, we
sounds
do
like
have
you
another hour.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, we got
Well, yeah. I
plenty
mean,
of
I'm sure. Yeah, I was in the Army for 15 years. I was a police officer before that, and then I was in the process of actually becoming a Special Forces NCO, communications NCO, and I got pretty bad broken up. I fell about 40 or 45 feet, shattered my right leg, and didn't get to finish the course. And so I kind of got booted back to the intelligence field, which is what I spent about half of my career doing. I did some special operations support as well.
So sort of Snowden.
Sniper. Yeah. Well, no, because I'm sniper qualified.
I was saying because he shattered his limbs and then he was stuck in intelligence.
Oh yeah, no, but I'd started out from the intel standpoint, and then did, support, special operations support, supporting Ranger battalions and special forces units. There are a lot of organizations out there that do not have names, and I will tell you that the reason why they do that type of stuff is to keep it, to a need to know kind of process.
Yeah.
That's how they do that. And, part of the reason is for operational security, of course. And I mean, this group right here on the phone, probably have some type of operational security mindset of, oh, I don't want this information getting out there, or I don't want anybody knowing this, or, that's normal. I get that.
I don't care anymore.
Sec
Okay.
is always on my mind.
Yeah. But I mean, to a certain degree, I'm not officially retired yet, so I still keep my, I try to keep my last name out of things as much as possible, and I use an alias, so I'm not really who I am as far as you guys know me. So
I wanted to ask you, Collapse, is the intel sector of, because I mean, military intelligence to me has always been an oxymoron. So I wanted to know, is the intel sector as bureaucratic, nightmarish as, say, the officer in the infantry sectors of the army.
I can give a
Yeah.
modern day response to that.
Yeah,
This-
I think so. But I mean, from the military side of intelligence is going to be different than the civilian side of intelligence. I've been to a lot of different of those three-letter places that we all talk bad about. I'm perm certed in two of them, and every now and then I'm like, yeah, is this going to be the day that I go through the gate and they tell me to get down on my knees and put my hands behind my back? Every time I go into a place like that, because they know that I won't be armed there, because you got to go through a metal detector. And so every now and then I wonder, like, if that's going to be the day that happens, because at some point I'm sure that they know my opinions or what I've said about
Oh, dude, they know.
about the empire. I mean, they have to, because I know the people who go out and try to find people like me. So
Yeah, exactly. You're fucked, bro.
yeah, and I
If
know
they want
that.
you, they're gonna come get you. Yeah, like,
Sure.
but you know that too. So
Right, that's right,
That's
and
pretty
that's
much like my
why.
whole premise, which is why I don't give two fucks. Like, if my name gets leaked, it's whatever.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
like I care, but at the same time, I'm like, bring it, bitch. Like, what are you gonna do?
Yeah, my suggestion is to pack a lunch. That's my
Yep,
suggestion.
exactly.
Yeah, I've been shooting longer than most of the fuckers you're gonna send to me. So yeah, but yeah, so yeah, we'll have we definitely I would definitely like to link up with the fella from Sierra Vista, because we probably need to buy each other a beer or something and have a good conversation.
Yeah, I trained out there for my 96 Bravo. I know all about Sierra Vista as well.
Yeah, that was my first MOS.
That's pretty funny. I hate this place. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of this place, man. I'm
Oh,
not a
it
big
sucks.
fan of this place.
It's a shithole, definitely.
I'm-
Try it, and
No,
when you're
actually, that's
running
kind of
8
why I
or plus
retired here.
miles every other day, it's even worse.
But I was a sailor, dude. I was on a submarine. It was only 300 and some odd feet long. It doesn't like I mean, by the time I got done with Sea Tour, I was 50 pounds heavier than I started, just because there was nothing else to do other than eat, sleep, and shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, we might know each other, man.
Yeah, no, it's probable. I don't recognize your voice, but some point, I don't know if you can get through to Jeremiah, because
we're all on Discord. Are you on Discord, Skip?
I'm not. I don't know how to get there.
Well, Discord is it's a chat server thing. So all you have to do is join the Discord app and you would be able to get into contact with him. I'll put you two in contact. And you can both also join the server that's sort of a backup communication location for like many of the people on Twitter, Skip. So sort of like our bunker for when Twitter eventually decides to cancel all our accounts.
Yeah, because that day's coming. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, so going back to collapsitarian, is that the subject to talk about, or are we still talking about the intelligence field as a whole?
Well, I mean, I think
the intelligence, I'll be honest.
Claire was interested as to what DeCarlos did as well. So maybe he could give like as much or however much detail he's comfortable giving with the same relation to what you just discussed, Skip.
I wanted to add something too related to what Claire said when I get a chance. Thanks.
Yeah.
What I did, I was on submarines. I was an electronics technician. Navigation wasn't nuclear in the nuclear power plant, but I lived and ate and slept right next to it. I qualified as an assistant navigator. I was a leading petty officer for the operations navigation division. Was a West Coast sailor. I was actually sailor of the year on a boat. And when I re-enlisted, had like 16 and a half years to go to 24 because I had gotten divorced and I wanted to make sure my pension was still good. I got my physical at Fort Huachuca, got me out of Sierra Vista, which was great. But as soon as I got to Groton, Connecticut, they held it all, but they let me retire. And I ended up running a transient division where it was kids that joined, found out the Navy wasn't for them, and did whatever they could to get out. And summer times were suck because I'd have between like 200, 300 people in there. But I always try to treat them fair because it's not their fault, man. They volunteered. They did more than the rest of society. They felt that they could lend a hand in doing something positive. I mean, at that age, everybody comes in with that dream. And my understanding that the officer parts of the Navy is the corporate arm, and if you can interpret the enlisted ranks back when I joined as more as the union arm, professional as hell, but I mean, there's only so much you can make an indentured servant do with so many hours in a day. There was a paradigm shift, and it was the second part of the Clinton administration. And it was right after I got audited by that wonderful person, that we were given the latitude because of our lack of proximity to the centers of power to innovate and try to do things in a better way. And we were able to be successful in our missions without giving our missions were more effective if you took the time to read the intelligence report than you did to read the impact statement, if that makes any sense.
Because of the work that you've done, I've got a question for you, DeCarlos.
Bring it.
I don't know how many years ago it was, but there was what they called a contrail off of California that looked an awful lot like a missile, and they played it off as it was just a plane. And then there's also a rumor that the recent so-called false alarm in Hawaii of a missile launch was an actual real launch, and that China had a quote-unquote rogue force within the military that was trying to start a war, and that missile actually was a real one, and it was shot down. Based on your experience and your background, did you have any comments on either of those statements? Just wondering what your take is on them.
If the Chinese Navy was able to place a submarine in proximity as close as that to Hawaii, it would be without having a presence around it, it would be a disappointment in my eyes. As far as the possibilities is stuff off the West Coast, I'm not really familiar with that, because back when I was in, they were launching rockets left and right off the coast up there. I forget what Air Force Base it is, name of it, up in like the north central part of California. So, and back then we were too busy trying to be the professionals to give the taxpayers the best bang for their buck by conflict avoidance, but still being ever present. That there's parts of my life, man, that I know nothing. I can't remember really. I don't want to remember anything, but the only stuff I remember is society screwing up when I was out there doing my job. That's what I remember.
But does that answer your question, Finian?
Sort of. Yeah, I mean, those incidents have happened in the past, and there's been instances where Chinese subs have popped up next to our fleets unannounced and as surprise. And I don't think our naval defense is as strong as people are led to believe, basically. And of course, the Russians have shown their capabilities lately. Basically, they have a 10,000 kilometer nuclear weapon that travels underwater, and then at the last minute it will pop up out of the water and then airburst a nuclear weapon on our coast. And basically they revealed that on purpose to say, hey, all these missile defense systems that you have don't matter, basically. You may think you're safe, but you're not. So there's a lot of stuff like that out there, and I know they play tit for tat and reveal this stuff on purpose, but people aren't as safe as they think they are, basically. And I think there's been some veiled threats that have gone on in the background, and our media won't cover it or say that that's what it is. But as a former intel analyst, that's the way I see it. That's all.
Yeah, I can agree with that, man. It's a pretty good assessment. I just see it as part of the continued herding and shaping operation that's going on. People moving that not realize what's actually going on underneath their feet. You know, so that they don't take the time to get their own ground truth and establish that. I can see how you get there.
Yeah, you're never going to get the truth from the government when you are a civilian that is not a cleared person. But the truth is, you're probably not going to get the truth when you are a cleared person.
Yep, compartmentalized intelligence works very, very well.
Yeah,
and it employs a lot of people and keeps the machine going, right?
Yeah, I mean, you know, my deployment to Bosnia. You know, hey, these are bad guys. We need to go in and get them. And, you know, that was the storyline, and that was what we were taught. And, you know, we were sold that, and that was what we believed. And, you know, at the end of the day, I think that a lot of the green suiters that I know and I'm still in contact with, you know, it comes down to, they're like, look, put all that stuff aside. Really what matters to me is the person to the left of me, the person to the right of me. I want to make sure that they come home alive. And if you think about it, that's the exact same storyline as the police. That's the same thing that the police will say. At the end of the day, we're the ones that go home. We go home to our families. And I do too. I do too.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But
police main motto is go home safe. But of course, who cares about anybody else doing it?
Right.
And yeah, and for the Bosnia-Serbia thing, when the Russians charged in, when they were told not to do it, I was cheering for them. Just saying.
Right. Yeah.
You're just giving opportunity for more civil war to start there, because the munitions we left there are now buried to be used against us next time we come.
Yeah, the Ukraine is going to be a really interesting scenario. And I've been paying a lot of attention to that, and I've been watching a lot of video that's coming back from the Ukraine, because that shit's getting put on YouTube.
Yeah, that's like 2007, 2008 time frame there, young people.
Right.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can. And welcome, Jonathan. Make sure to turn off your cam, because for some reason that decreases whatever about this call. And make sure to mute your mic when you're not talking, but let everybody know what you do, where you can be found, and I believe you said you're a veteran as well, so that should be interesting to add to this conversation. We're talking anti-imperialism.
Yeah, I heard y'all talking, and I was working. First of all, before we do this, can I adjust this so we can do the settings that was helpful for the Google Hangout right now? Can you walk me through that real quick?
Oh, well, just it's the camera button.
Okay. All right, so I can leave it on and then turn it off when I'm done talking and mute.
Well, that'd be the mic button. But yeah, but the camera button should definitely be off, because I think it like reduces whatever about the call. Like, I think that might have been something that contributed. That is, unless the government is actively censoring me, which is possible.
Well, you guys got to see how hideous I am. So, all right. I live in Kentucky. I'm a former pet for the New World Order. I was in the 3rd Infantry Division. I joined the Army in 2003, and I was in Ramadi, Iraq in 2005 as an 11 Bravo. I did my 3 years. I got out for 2 years, and then I went back in the Tennessee National Guard and did 6 years with the Tennessee National Guard and deployed with them. And I have a YouTube channel, which is my name, Jonathan Picone. And Mark Passio really woke me up on this and anarchy, and I'm trying to speak out against, the whole sham with the whole firearms industry and how it's materialism and it's not really what we need to be preparing or awakening to what's going on. And for that, I'm kind of blacklisted on that. I've been intertwined with this, quote, firearm industry, with the gun community, for lack of better words. And so that's my niche, is trying to get people out of that mindset of the tactical operator thing when there's horrible things happening on this planet right now. And I'm anti-military since I did my time over there. So I met him and Carlos last night, and those guys were just awesome. So he invited me to come here today and talk to you guys. So I figured I'd come here and speak to you. And if you had any questions for me or something you'd want me to continue with the topic, just let me know.
Yeah, we got about half an hour more, so you got some time to do that.
Okay. What was your question you had for me, sir?
Well, generally, what did you do over there, and what is your experience with imperialism? Because this is generally a chat to describe and find some sort of concrete way to oppose imperialism, and maybe it'll have to split into 2 days. Next week we're talking against the militarization of police, but this week we're talking against imperialism. So that's the general topic right now.
Well, first of all, the whole way we're going to have to stop this is it has to start from the individual, from within. And the problem we're having is that government and military service is somehow used as mind control, and is used for people to have a fake line of honor, thinking that that's what that's what it's about. I mean, it starts with video games. It starts with the movie industry. You got Steven Spielberg making his rhetoric with World War II and killing Nazis. And then you had Black Hawk Down right before I enlisted. And then you had Starship Troopers, where they were invading Iraqnids. And so, it's a big psychological operation, and they got it full spectrum. And the problem is that order following is to me, it's a form of laziness. And at the end of the day, it starts from within the person. They have to have the conscience to understand that it's immoral and unrighteous to do so. And that's where all this is going to have to stop, because the powers that be might have the money, they might have the finances, they might have the infrastructure, but none of it gets manifested without their order followers, which is police, military, and all their minions in between that does all their admin, S1 shop, secretarial work, all of them. And that's where I feel like it needs to start from within the individual.
Well, Stormcloud's Gathering did a video on this, and his work is always top notch, but he's got one on the chain of obedience. And our main threat as a society of liberty-loving people is that chain of obedience, because like you were saying, the majority of the people will do what they're ordered to do, and it doesn't matter if it's ethical or not. And one of the main ways that we can stop this shit from happening is just don't enlist in the military. I was in the military too, but I would do everything I possibly could to stop anybody that I cared about from joining because of what I know. And I'll gladly sit down and talk to them and explain it too.
Yeah, the problem we're having, though, is that you have a lot of kids chasing the glory, chasing the convenience of college, getting paid for. And there's a carrot at the end of the stick, and our society always tries to portray the U.S. military, or you dying overseas, like being a sacrifice or shedding blood in a foreign nation is somehow like the most Christ-like thing you can do for your nation. And the other thing is that we're always portrayed as the good guys, and we could never do any wrong, when any older follower is wrong.
Yeah, that reminds me of the Rest Repo movie, where the captain is absolutely shocked when his unit is attacked, leaving a village that he just ordered a rocket attack against. And in that rocket attack, he only killed women and children. And of course, when he left, the men of that village attacked his unit with such violence that some of his men had their throats slit, and they were all shocked why it happened. Well, duh, you just killed a bunch of people's loved ones. So yeah, that's the kind of stuff that's going on, and most people don't understand why.
Well, and the other thing is from my experience in Iraq in 2005, the common thread for all of us, because in the military, grunt guys had to either fill sandbags, bird shit, do tower guard, or go out and do patrol or maintenance vehicles. And the thing is that we always asked ourselves, what are we doing here? Why are we here? There was no search for weapons of mass destruction. It was pretty much doing exactly what the police is doing now in this nation. We're going door to door. There's no real rules of engagement. It was very lenient. If they had a ski mask, if they had a cell phone and they're looking at you, if they had a camcorder and they're looking at you, even if they looked suspicious, the ROE was lenient. Everything got swept under the rug. We kept on looking for munitions that either was there coming from China and France, or getting constantly bombed. And what I came to the conclusion is that they used pennies on the dollar explosives to destroy huge up-armored vehicles and Humvees, whatever. And the thing is that it's an industry, and that they don't make no money if nobody dies and nothing gets blown up. So what's the best way to do is bring some guys from Chechnya, which is most of the guys we were fighting, at least from my experience. Bring some guys there and make pennies on the dollar explosives. So that way all these companies with Bradleys, food, weapons, ammunition, body armor, always has to be replaced, so that way it constantly feeds the system, so they have a reason to go, because there was no search for weapons of mass destruction. It was just being a police force.
Hold up. Chechnya.
Say again?
Chechnya in Iraq.
Yeah, we were fighting.
That shit's been going on for generations, man.
Yes, Chechnyans, and I would actually say that I've guessed or assumed that I think we were the snipers we were dealing with, because we had a problem with snipers over there. I think we're probably Mossad, or one sniper that was killed was a German mercenary. So it makes me wonder if maybe they were just sending Blackwater or private security guys outside the wire just to stir our nest up, to have a reason to keep on having such a serious aggression, and or Mossad, or they were Chechens.
Now, Claire, from your journalistic perspective, because you've written a shit ton of articles, and a lot of them have been very high quality, which is why I originally sent you the friend request, which, happy friendiversary, because we were celebrating that on Facebook this morning. But what questions would you have for any of these people based on what you've heard today?
I wonder whether I always question this, whether people have truly considered the repercussions of curtailing any sort of speech whatsoever in any avenue whatsoever, even with the thinnest shred of an excuse. Over and over again, it's used as a permission slip to basically slam the door shut on any sort of worthwhile conversation, etc. I mean, I also would like to speak at some point on, not now, not tonight, but on the various nefarious avenues of the security state, because it reaches out to individuals who are activists and journalists and such, and I don't think that people give enough credit where credit is due for why we're not able to foment any sort of activism in any better numbers. There's a lot going on that people aren't giving credit to.
Okay, any of you care to respond to that?
You're saying, ma'am, you see more incremental change in a positive direction than in a negative one?
No, I don't. No, absolutely not. I just believe that there are among activists more of a shared direction than they would have you believe. It seems like everybody's oppositional to working together about all sorts of things because of this label and that label, where we could come together and actually battle better.
Well,
right. It's almost like, I agree with you on that one. Sorry about that.
I was wanting to say or add, do you guys remember when you were talking about, you can't wait for the nuke to come, and it was just kind of a tongue-in-cheek statement? I was listening to that earlier.
That was me.
Okay, what my statement is that as hard as it's going to be to accept, for all that humanity has done, which is kind of a blasé word anyways, there is going to be consequence for us having lack of compassion for mother and natural law. And we are going to have to suffer because there is consequence for action or lack thereof, whether we like it or not. And I feel like it's the only way for people to pull through and turn off the lights and start over again, to be honest with you.
It sounds terrible, but I think that that's one of the tenets of collapsitarianism, is just realizing that everything that we've talked about in the last 3 hours is literally unchangeable. There is nothing that any of us, or if there were 1,000 of us, could do to change it.
Lupinate, you got fuzz on your mic or whatever.
Sorry. Is it better now?
No, it was Lupinate. It's fine.
Okay. All right. It is literally unchangeable. And what I mean that is the fact that the system is designed to not be changed. It has its own version of autopilot. And for, for the people who vote, look, I think that it's really just designed to make people feel better and designed to make people feel like they have a voice and that somehow they're able to steer this monstrosity. And, oh, well, it didn't work this time. I guess I'll just have to vote harder next time. But it is literally unsteerable. It is unchangeable. And so there's only one solution for this system, and it is for it to collapse.
We got to stop playing their game. And the thing is that it absolves any responsibility. And as great as the Constitution is and this U.S. government supposedly we have, it's not working. It hasn't been working. Once we continue to have a standing army after the revolution, I think was our downfall. And I think the Civil War was the first gen of the New World Order. But I agree with you, sir, on that. And the other thing is, too, on a metaphysical or spiritual realm, is that Mother is going to scratch her back eventually. And she can only take so much, and she can cleanse herself. And we could have a chance to be a white blood cell on this planet and live with abundance and freedom and harmony with everything on here. But instead we choose to live in our material, artificial world and become a cancer, and it can only last for so long.
Well, most people are distracted. I mean, just recently on Facebook, my status was the government of men by men is an illusion, an unreality, a mere semblance that mocks alike the autocrat and the crowd that attempts to imitate him. That was by Auberon Herbert, and he actually made a short book about voluntarism, and it's related to this. Like, we are set in this illusion, a game, a trick basically on most people that think that they have some kind of power in the system by voting or whatever means you think. And it's all a joke. The true, like somebody was talking about the political class earlier, the political class is not in charge. It's the oligarchs behind them. And the war machine is not controlled by the political class. They do what they're told. And like you were saying, there's no way for us as individuals to stop this. Our best option is just to walk away from it and prepare for the consequences of it. Because unfortunately, the majority of the people around us are dangerous robots. That's it. I mean, there's nothing we can do to wake those people up. We can try. We might wake one or two people up, but unfortunately, I think the vast majority will always be asleep or well programmed.
Why don't we just hit the accelerating button?
Well, there's one thing I will say is that this is sort of concept that Terry Pratchett explored in one of his last books, the Ginganunga Gap, the gap between the old world and the new world that has to come immediately following it. And how do you get from one to the other without basically falling through the cracks? And I think part of the problem is we're all assuming that war's inevitable in this situation. I'm not there yet. I'm still not convinced.
War is not inevitable. It's just very fucking likely. And rivers of blood are not inevitable, but they're very fucking likely. I
agree the rivers of blood are, but I'm still not convinced about all-out world war.
So war is unlikely, but rivers of blood aren't. Right. Okay.
Yeah, well, no matter what's going to happen, it's going to be violent. And that's my whole thing about me liking the idea of collapse. Like, why don't we just try to accelerate it as well, but like using their means?
Claire brings
And then
up good
also-
points, is that we should try to do the opposite. And in terms of being a white blood cell, we need to. This is a culture war. We need to not encourage the idea, but maybe point it in people's direction and say, well, you wanted it, here you got it, instead of saying, to the effect of it's going to happen, so we should just let it happen. Say it's going to happen, but we'll try our damnedest to get in its way. That's what I think. That's the reason I'm not a 100% collapsitarian, even though I've got visions in my brain that make Revelations look like a Disney cartoon.
If none of us cared,
don't get me wrong, orbital ion cannon.
We wouldn't be in this hangout right now if we didn't care. I mean, I'm not saying don't do anything. Obviously, state your case. I mean, like, all of us technically could be disappeared or killed at any moment, but I am going to publicly, with my full name and, where I live, everything, fight in this fight for what is right, because it's worth it. I've always said and written that liberty, individual liberty specifically, is worth any price. That means my life, the lives of my children, everybody. And people need to step up to that fact, because through history, examples abound. When people don't do that, horrible atrocities exist, and we need to do everything we can to stop them as much as possible, even if we fail. It doesn't matter if I fail. I will die with a smile on my face as long as I was doing the right thing. That's all that matters.
Yeah. I would say that madness just needs a little push is all.
Well, this is my take on things, because, I understand the whole giving it a push, giving it a help. I mean, I even have some people that are like, well, you know what? Let's just start picking the worst of the two evils and start voting straight down the line every single, straight evil. I'm not on board with that, just simply because I feel like I'm condoning it, or I'm saying that they have my permission to do what it is that they do. That, of course, that permission can be fabricated. We all know that an electronic vote is no vote. But what I would say is that I've taken my platform at the local level. What I do on Twitter is just simply to try to proliferate the idea. But my effort is actually done at the local level, which means that I have a local group of people that all believe roughly the same way, not all identical. And we have started to work on what it is that we know we are going to need to do post-collapse, what it is that we're going to need to survive, how are we going to establish local security to where if our neighborhood says, you know what, we don't want anybody from outside coming in until we vet you. Being able to do that and set that up so that, we don't have, the same thing that's going on right now in the EU, or, something similar to what's going on in London and some of these other places that I've actually read. Because, Europe is in the process of a collapse. The EU is collapsing. It's happening differently there than what we will see here in the U.S. I believe that some of the collapse will come from the southern border, but much of the collapse will come from an economic standpoint.
Well, yeah, and let me just say multiple things. First off, we've got somebody who wanted to come in earlier. I didn't send the link until an hour in, so I apologize for that. But why don't you introduce yourself, Conan? Let us know where people can find you, what you do, and also, because we only have pretty much 15 minutes left, let us know whatever you want. You basically got carte blanche based on what's already been said here.
Sweet. Thank you for having me. What is there to say? I'm Conan, son of Conan. My dad is famous, so I troll people on Twitter. And and I also advocate for a status-free life, finding ways to effectively live your life without contributing to the state and its proliferation. And that's what I'm here for. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, and you actually know the collapsitarian in chat here. Skip and Conan have been talking for a long time.
Oh yeah, and And that's the master right there. That's sensei. So he can feel free to correct me anytime I say anything that's wrong. But something I said to someone earlier was nowhere in the book of Collapsitaria does it say you have to like it, right? That's not a requirement. It doesn't have to be your. I would rather things be. That's not necessary. We can't all be warlords after all. But
well, you know.
So the point is to be prepared for it. Number one, collapsitarianism is to acknowledge that it is inevitable, and number two, to brace and prepare for it as an inevitability. Everything else beyond that is detail. But yeah, that's the primary functionality of it, is to make sure that people understand what we're dealing with and how to properly prepare for it.
Right, sort of like since we've got a lot of vets in chat, I'm sure some of you have watched Vet TV, and you know that the humor of the veteran circle is pretty much dark all the time. It's not because they necessarily like what they did over there. It's because that's how you deal with the fact that you know things are shit and probably gonna get worse.
Yeah, we actually have an acronym called SNAFU, Situation Normal, all fucked up.
All fucked up.
Yep.
Well, I have a problem with Vet
FUBAR.
I have a problem with Vet TV because they could be using that to show that order following is wrong and get the whole military complex to quit doing it,
right?
Glorifying it, and so that's my problem with their channel.
Right, yeah, and I'm not saying I endorse it, but I like humor, I like jokes, and I defend 100% the concept of using jokes to deal with things. So, it's not necessarily that I agree with what they're trying to get it to deal with, and I'm not I certainly don't agree with what they did, but I definitely appreciate the idea of their mission, because it's sort of like we can make jokes about 9/11, even though 3,000 plus people, very likely died in that tragic day. We can make jet fuel doesn't melt steel beams jokes all we want, because it's dark humor, and dark humor helps people move on.
Any branch of the military, dark humor or humor in general is the only thing that helps you go through, and everybody's a comedian in the military.
Oh yeah.
Coping mechanism.
Can I just interject quickly, because there's something I kind of, after listening to you guys this whole time, there's something I've come to a bit of a realization. Wars evolved over time, not just tactically and technologically, but also the causes of it. If you look at it from a historical perspective, you've got, as I said before, you've got the material wars where you were trying to get slaves, or you're trying to get land, or you're trying to get resources. And then you had what I consider to be the empathetic wars, where it was you were fighting for peace, or you were fighting to stop terror, or you're fighting to stop the proliferation of drugs, or whatever it may be, whatever war you're trying to wage.
And now, of course, people just fight because it pays for their college or something similar. Lets them travel, see the world, blah, blah. Lets them lets them play a real-world version of Call of Duty.
Yeah,
that's the incentive. That's the incentive. I'll grant you, but it's not the. It's sort of how it evolved, not the evolution stage. Because we're rapidly reaching a point where people don't believe in being empathetic about it anymore, for a wide variety of reasons. Some good, some bad.
I mean, I would say that we've been there specifically for a really long time now. I mean, the reason Bradley Manning, now Chelsea, came out with the information she did was specifically because people were being callous about it.
Well, the other thing too. I'm sorry. Go ahead, man.
No, that's the point. I don't know what the next stage is, because if people
the next stage is Rivers of Blood and Years of Darkness.
I don't agree. I don't agree with that whole assessment. That River. I know that in the end stage, you're correct about the assessment, but you got if you understand their not just their tactics, but their general strategy, you can generate some tactics that we can't reverse it, but we can influence it to turn. I mean, is a half a degree worth it anymore, or one way or the other? Or are we just going to say hell with it?
See, the thing is, for me, my personal perspective is form institutions outside of government. Try to try to make as many of these institutions that government tries to monopolize, defense, schooling, infrastructure, healthcare, all of this shit, welfare, charity, blah, blah, all of this shit. If you can get institutions that aren't the government behind those things, suddenly people will have an outlet for those things that isn't the government. And that's the only real way to switch this beast around, is getting it some competition. And then that competition's gonna have to compete really fucking hard, because ultimately a lot of these things are like born out of people's desire to delegate responsibility elsewhere. So they'll have to make like a really good case for like switching responsibility back to the hands of individuals on a very small scale, rather than like trusting some mega corporation, or the biggest mega corporation that is government, or is like the biggest gang in the world that is government, to do all these things. That's the only way we're going to move forward, really, is to do it ourselves instead of asking the government to do jack shit differently, because they won't. They're bullheaded. They're moving in the direction they want to, and they're not really slowing down as far as I can tell.
Well, the thing is that there's an American war campaign right now. We're in the red zone, and the weapons are cleared hot for the law enforcement and order followers.
Oh, yeah.
And I want to get to the level that you were speaking of, man, but I really think I feel like, when everything is washed away, that's the mindset that hopefully people will have to be able to articulate or manifest something for the better. But we're occupied now, man. Yeah, and the war's already started.
War down the street.
Yeah, the war's already started, dude. I mean, what do you think? We owe all of us, every one of you probably has high respect and honor for the men that had flintlock rifles with deerskin moccasins doing some Appalachian guerrilla shit during the Revolution. What do you think they would do if they seen where we are at right now? You think they'd pick up their flintlocks and get to work, or would they probably be?
They'd probably laugh first.
Right. You know what I mean? So at what level are we going to have to? But the thing is there's so many small numbers to actually step outside the wire and get it going. Or I couldn't say get it going, but actually solve the problem, that it almost seems like everybody's going to have to be flushed down the toilet for it to really start to get better.
Very possibly. But that's the thing. I'm a pessimist, I'm a cynic, I'm an asshole, but I'm also somebody who's trying to reverse this. And in ultimate terms, like, I think Claire's with me here. I see the evil coming, and we've got to try and put our backs against the gears and the wheels of this machine, as that guy screamed in front of Berkeley. Like, we've got to actually activize here. We've got to activize, we got to activate, and we've got to get everybody moving in a direction that goes against the state. And that's the reason I don't like these petty arguments between leftists and rightists, and saying commies aren't people, and punch a Nazi, because a Nazi's everybody to the right of me. The whole concept of these sort of petty interpersonal struggles is to divide us so that we can't take action. So my personal bent is that we need to move forward as quickly as possible and at as much force as possible, and I'm sure Claire would agree with me there.
Can I ask a rather trollish question?
I mean, go for it. We don't have much time left, though, so you might not get many answers.
Fair enough. Are collectivists people?
Yes, they're just dumb.
Yeah, I don't care if they're fascist or communist.
See, I'm starting to wonder if they're new subspecies.
No, they're still people, and even if they were a quote subspecies, they'd still be hominins. They'd still be people.
And in most cases, they're just plugged into the matrix.
Yeah, and that's the thing. We've got to make everybody realize that they're cogs, and we've got to pull them out and form a new machine that can battle this machine. We've got to form new systems. We've got to form new societies. We've got to form new ideologies, and we have to fuck these motherfuckers up before it's too late.
Well, the Tories never went away after the war. They still stayed here, so it's still running through their DNA, man.
Oh yeah, there's royal blood in every president, and anybody who doesn't know that should just Google that shit, because it's really impressive. Like, a 13-year-old girl figured it out. She wrote this giant chart about it. And
I'm talking about Tories, the sympathizers that were amongst us during that time period. They were in
Right.
favor for the crown. They never went away. They still stayed here, and it's still running through their DNA. And I think we're feeling what our forefathers felt trying to deal with this.
Well,
That's a
we're
fair
feeling-
point. Don't forget they were a small majority also of the population at the time. So it's not surprising that you'd still, it's not like we went and rounded them up and threw them out of helicopters afterwards. So it's not surprising to realize that train of thought's still gonna, the old bootlicker mentality would, it's not like it just developed overnight. You know what
They
I
were
mean?
going to send him to Canada, but they decided no. And I was like, damn it, that would have probably been the best thing for us.
Well, we fought that. Again, I hate that term, but the people that were alive during the Revolutionary War fought that war, and then they basically lost it within a short amount of time. I mean, the War of 1812, Hamilton, that conflict happened, and basically they won the military victory and lost the war overall. We've long since lost that war.
Yeah.
Let's be honest, though. If we had sent all the Tories to Canada, Canada would probably be a worldwide warmongering neocon power state at this point. So maybe it's for the best.
Like the United States is today, yes.
Well, on that note, I do want to get some housekeeping done before this stream is over. So let me just say a few things. First off, I will be doing a regular daily news show that will be done on Mondays to Fridays. So I'll be getting some people interested in being anchors on specific days so that we can make sure that we have regular thoughts coming from the same people. We'll be still doing Shit Shooting Sunday and Real News Wednesday. And I'm also, after this stream, I'm going to go on Chairview's stream. So if anybody wants to look up who Chairview is and look up what his stream is, they can do that, and they can hear me speak for more time. I'll be there in about half an hour. Additionally, on Wednesday, after Real News Wednesday, the Nazi furries have finally invited me on a stream. So I'm going to go and discuss how anarchy is über alles. And I'm going to try and convince a bunch of people of things that they've never thought of that way before. So it should be a relatively interesting stream. I'll link to that in the tags when I decide to make a post about Real News Wednesday. All of these things are brought to you by the sponsors in the description, so feel free to check out any of those things. Now, everybody here, feel free to let people know who you are, where they can find you, and what you do, so that people can get an idea, and so that people can go find you if they're interested in learning about more of your specific perspective.
I am Finian. I'm mainly on Steemit these days, and I am also on accounts under my business at Liberty Pro PI on Twitter, and also libertyprofessionals.com. And I'm a residential security expert and private investigator in Virginia. And I just wanted to say that Conan, if you go back and watch that movie, his main premise was destroying the state and cultists, religious cultists. So something like that is actually something to be praised. Thanks for having me. Have a good night.
Well, thank you so much for that. That is an honor to say. And in fact, since you did mention Conan destroying shit, I actually do have something to plug for once. I'm about to start my own segment. I'm going to throw it on a couple of the podcasts, like the Peaceful Treason and, of course, the Friends Against Government, my favorite weirdos. But I'm going to call it Conan the Destroyer. The long and short is I will take different topics, subjects, groups, and individuals upon request, of course, and I will crush them thoroughly. And it is going to be very entertaining. So I look forward to providing that for everyone to enjoy. And thank you again for the cool Conan reference. That's actually exactly why I selected him. You go back and you read his, Howard's original work, and Conan was all about self-determination. So yeah, guys, look forward to that. It's going to be awesome.
Cool. This is Skip. I go by Collapsitarian in several different circles, but you can find me on Twitter. I am at the Free Rifleman, and I have Skip and then hashtag Collapsitarian in there. I also have Collapsitarian Ball, which is also on Twitter, and that is at Collapsitarian1. So you can find me at either of those locations if you're on Twitter. If you're not on Twitter, and I understand, then I'll give you my email address. It's freerifleman@yahoo.com. All right, thanks.
Skip is the man. That's all I got to say about that.
I'm Mike DiCarlo. I go by Michael. I have a webpage called DiCarloStanger.com. I write about tyranny in the government and fraud, waste, and abuse and certain other topics. And it's mostly local based instead of national, because that's really the one where we're going to have the most effect. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Anybody next?
I guess I'll go. My name's Jonathan Picone. I have a YouTube channel, and being a former veteran, I am trying to get that spark and that emotion of guilt from veterans to wake up and speak out. And my artwork, I do gun music videos that has a very synchronistic meaning behind it. And I just want to say I appreciate every one of you being here. All of you are incarnations. This isn't your first rodeo doing this, and it's a great honor and humbling. And great, I'm ever grateful that there's like-minded people like you across this nation and world right now, and it gives me peace.
Is it just me, or when his mic was jostling around, it kind of sounded like he was reloading a rifle?
You might have been.
I was fiddling with my pistol the other night because I just got a Beretta 92, and it's got a sweet action.
So I called it.
No, my fat cat knocked out the charger. When it hit the ground, it had a tick or cling to it.
It's not trigger locked, unloaded, and separate from the ammo in a safe? What are you talking about?
Every one of my weapons is loaded. The only time it's unloaded is to clean, and then when I'm cleaning it, another gun is loaded next to me.
I love you.
Weapon's worthless if it isn't loaded.
Fair point.
Luke,
I'll have my prenup attorney contact your prenup attorney.
Hey,
We'll make this
Luke,
happen.
hey, Luke,
Yep.
I wanted to tell you, man, that I have there's a Revolution War of 1812 memorial and near a town in Kentucky out here, and it had an account about a British officer who was getting sniped by one Kentucky militiaman. And I really would like to have your voice and speak over that for one of my next music videos, so that way I have a very proper, kind of rough, posh accent and portray what the account was from the British officer getting sniped, because I really think it's powerful.
No, man, you can pull it off. No one will pick up your
I could
accent.
pull it off, but I could pull it off properly because I've been over here for 17 years, but I am American. That's the thing that makes
You
me
couldn't
laugh
pull it off.
about this.
I need
can still pull it off, that's true.
I need that
I
colonial
can do
accent.
both sides.
Well, check out my channel and see some of my music videos, because I like making gun music videos, because it just seems like all these other gun industries aren't sending a message of rebellion, and so I try to use good chummage, good music that opens up something inside of you. And I mean, one of my last videos, I burned a British flag, so I just wonder if that'll.
Wait, I'm sorry. I know this is supposed to be serious, but Jeremiah invited me, so blame him. You just said you wanted to open something up inside of people, and I endorse that entirely and wholeheartedly. I just want to be the camera guy.
Yeah, people need to have the empathy wave hit them already.
Well, the other thing, Conan, is that why do you think the ruler was a serpent god, right?
Exactly. Very, very much so, man.
All right. Well, Lupinit and Claire, you both have not yet let people know where they can find you, so feel free to do so.
You go first, Claire.
That is if she's still here. I tried getting her in on a few of these subjects, and she didn't respond. So, Claire, are you still there? Claire?
Probably being blocked by the powers that shouldn't be.
Yeah,
It
that
looks
might
like
be.
she has her mic muted.
Sounds right.
She does. And I can
Claire,
manually
without-
unmute it, but I'm not going to do that because she might be saying something she doesn't want heard right now. So,
Fair enough. I'll
But
go
anyway,
then.
You're a good friend, Jeremiah. You're way better than me.
So I'm Lupinate. You can find me on Discord or Minds as Lupinate, and on Steam as Anarchic Wolf. Mainly write about rather large subjects like reality and how voluntarism is sort of the only logical conclusion that can be drawn from it. I'm trying to write proofs for it too, so it's proving a bit interesting.
Very cool.
Should I go? Or no?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm Idiot's Query. You can find me on Twitter, Minds, and Discord as well. I talk a lot of shit, and I like to try to use reason and logic as much as possible, and I ask a lot of stupid questions. That's me.
And you have fantastic teeth.
Absolutely beautiful teeth.
Now, are those
People are
actually your
saying
teeth,
they're the
or
best teeth.
I don't know. I found his eyes the most sexy, but whatever.
That's true.
well, I just messaged Claire on Facebook. I think she saw it. So, one moment. But yeah, I'm Insanity is free on Twitter. I'm Jeremiah Talks on YouTube. Y'all already know that. There are plenty of sponsors in the box. She says it's fucking up again, so I'm just gonna let her know to let me know where people can find her. One moment.
You're a kind soul, Jeremiah. Can I just take this moment to go slightly off topic and point out that if you are a libertarian, you cannot in any shape, form, or fashion endorse state borders or state empowerment in any shape, form, or fashion whatsoever. The only closest compromise you can find would be to relieve the state of the burden of maintaining that border and providing that to private individuals to own and operate and allow who they choose on their property. Any other stance is not libertarian. There you go. I'm Conan, and I will fuck your mom.
Also, the state can't own anything because it stole everything. You can't own what you stole, bitch.
That's right. That's all I'm saying.
You need to come into the G+ libertarian community. They've been pushing the closed borders nonsense for ages now.
Bordertarians, I hate them. I posted about that on Facebook. The Bordertarians, like, please let me know when you're a Bordertarian so I can block you.
Hey,
So let me just say this at this point. Claire has let me know to let people know because I think she might have been trying to talk for a while now, but she says it's fucking up again. She says they can find me at Anti-Media, Free Thought Project, Mint Press News, and Mind Unleashed, and you can obviously find her by looking up that name. So feel free to do so.
Most definitely will. Thank you.
Indeed.
This entire chat has been fucked with by the government. I goddamn know it.
That's probably why it's performing so poorly.
Well, you should take that with honor to let him know there's.
That's right. They don't poke and prick the people that don't concern them. So that's a good sign.
Hey, all I gotta say, if they tried to assassinate one of us, all I gotta say is if they're real, man, why don't you challenge me to a duel and see what the outcome is.
Nigga, that's what I'm all about. Like, let me sword fight your ass. Let's do this.
I've been practicing my draw time. Let's see it.
Yeah. I'm not down for a knife fight. Make it physical.
I mean, that sounds cool, but on a more realistic, practical point, I'm not really interested. I mean, I'm only going to, if you ever see me fighting in the street with someone, chances are pretty solid that's somebody that I like and respect and hope that they're alive in the morning. So that's not my personal style, my friend. I'm not one for standing out and gunfighting in the streets. I'm more for conscripts just wanting to go home because they're afraid every time they ride past the tree line, personally. But to each their own, you know.
Yeah, just do the Ron Paul solution. End the military empire with one fell swoop. Bring the boys back home.
I just want to be up in the thick of it. I want to be punching bitches right in their face. Or shooting them right in their face. Honestly, that's why I went. That's why I was going into special forces, man.
Everybody needs a shot.
You should apply as a private security guard for one of these speakers like Ben Shapiro or something. So the next time he goes to Berkeley, you can just knock all the collectivists out.
Look at him and like, hey, hey, come here. We got a helicopter for you.
Hey, Conan, I got a saying, dude. Conan.
What's that? Go ahead, brother.
Oh, I got a saying that I use all the time for my YouTube channel. It's a little slang or nickname called AGS, and it means Appalachian Guerrilla Shit. So whenever you're doing,
you already knew what I was talking about them boys being nervous right now,
bro. Hit that wood line, bro. We'll see him coming.
Well,
that's right. We'll see them. They will see us. That's right. They just want to go home. God bless them.
Well, what I will say, if any of y'all want to come on the Wednesday show, it's a news show that we discuss everything that happened after last Wednesday, and I would be happy to have y'all on to continue this conversation then, and it'll surround whatever news topics you bring up, so feel free to bring up as many news topics as you want, just as long as you have links. That is, unless, of course, the government decided to shut off this chat again, which is very possible. Let's see if people start to come on this fucking chat again. Yeah, there we go. Fucking government is literally doing. This has happened 4 goddamn times now, hasn't it?
I have to say that I'm close to that Eastern Appalachia area, and I highly support it. So, all those Appalachia people that are similar to the Western Redoubt, I salute you.
Hey, Finian, you got that spirit in you too, man. I know you do.
I'm adopted, but my parents came from West Virginia, so I kind of understand.
You got that draw, homie.
All right, well,
I'm originally Virginian.
Since nobody's coming back in the chat, I will definitely say any of you are welcome to come on at any one of these sorts of things, providing we have space. And once I get a better computer, which hint, hint, nudge, nudge, if anybody out there wants to support me, y'all can by the support me link in the description at the bottom of the description. That link includes many ways to just plainly donate, many free ways to support me by going to one of my affiliate links, many things you can buy to support the show, and just my Patreon link would be definitely appreciated. So feel free to do that, and I, I'll be able to, after a certain amount of support starts to come in, do this in a different way. I want to start streaming off of Discord, but I can't do that with my current computer. My current computer, it cannot hack it. So feel free to go support any of this show, and we'll talk on Wednesday.
You know that I supported Brian in a similar initiative. I think a few of us friends got him a new computer. I would gladly help get you a new computer. So yeah,
okay,
we'll work out the details. We'll make it happen, man.
Sounds good.
And I got some jackets I got made with pockets on them, and you just tell me your size, and I'll get you a cool jacket to have that at least be able to blend in. It's OD green, and it's my little thing I'm doing to make some money on the side for my YouTube channel. So if you're interested, give me your size shirt, and I'll get you one of my custom made shirts for you. That way you can hold a tourniquet in your pocket.
All right. Well, I'll strongly consider that. Anyway, this has already gone on like 15 minutes past the time when it normally ends, so I'm going to hit the stop broadcast button in about 10 seconds. Pleasure having y'all on.
Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
It was enjoyable.
Take care.
Later,
everybody's pleasure meeting you.
All right,
Thanks
good meeting
all.
you.